Chapter 9:17. Ji Tianqing, Yun Zhongqi, and the others felt their hearts clench tightly. Everyone looked at Yun Yao's figure and watched her charge toward the Demon King without hesitation. They were extremely worried. However, no one was able to stop her. It was too late. The ancient demon emperor looked down at Yun Yao, and a disdainful sneer appeared on his face when he saw her charging over recklessly. "Huh, so what if you're angry? In front of absolute power, you're like a moth darting into a flame. You'll be reduced to ashes." As he spoke, he waved his hand and shot out a ray of black light. Swoosh! That ray of black light, which contained an icy aura of death, was actually a pitch-black ancient bell. This ancient bell was a Dharma treasure of the demon Tao. It had a simple design and was carved with the words and symbols of the demon race, as well as various images of demons. The pitch-black ancient bell rapidly expanded and became as big as a house. It descended from the sky and instantly enveloped Yun Yao. Swoosh! With a flash of black light, the pitch-black ancient bell swallowed Yun Yao and disappeared without a trace. The ancient bell flew back into the sky and quickly shrunk to the size of a palm before falling into the Demon King's palm. He held the ancient bell that was the size of a small bell, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Ji Tianqing was instantly enraged when he saw this. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "Demon King! You damn demon! Didn't you want the Kenshin bloodline? Your target is me. Come at me. Let go of Yun Yao." The Demon King looked at him and sneered. "Let go of her? Huh, stop dreaming. You and your wife, as well as your friends and family, all of you will die. I won't let anyone go." Then, he played with the pitch-black ancient bell in his palm and said in a mocking tone, "This is my Dharma treasure, the soul-refining bell. No matter if you're a human or a demon, no matter how powerful you are, after being suppressed by my soul-refining bell, you'll be refined into ashes within an hour. Even your soul will be reduced to ashes. Yun Yao is dead for sure. It's your turn to die now. You have to be buried with her." As soon as he finished speaking, the Demon Emperor unleashed a blood-red beam of light that descended from the sky towards Ji Tianqing. The blood-colored beam of light was like a rope, but it was also like an agile demonic snake. Its speed was as fast as a stream of light. Ji Tianqing erupted with his strongest strength and retreated as fast as lightning, but in the end, he was unable to dodge. Boom! The blood-red beam of light hit him, causing his face to turn pale. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, the top of the light pillar instantly split into a dozen bloody tentacles and tied him up like ropes. The dark red blood light rope tied him up tightly, and he couldn't move at all. Immediately after, rows of sharp spikes emerged from the dark red rope and pierced deeply into his flesh, quickly absorbing his blood. His blood flowed along the dark red rope and gathered in the blood-red beam of light. The Demon King was quickly devouring it. The Demon King revealed a smug look. With a ferocious expression, he shouted, "Ji Tianqing, wait till I suck your blood dry and take your Kenshin bloodline. Then, you can die." Ji Tianqing's blood was rapidly draining from his body. Instantly, his skin turned pale. His strength was rapidly weakening, and so was his vitality. He struggled with all his might, but he couldn't break free from the binding of the blood-red rope. "Demon King! You despicable, evil bastard! You will die a horrible death." He cursed furiously, but his voice was getting hoarser and hoarser. His consciousness was also gradually fading. Seeing this, Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They roared furiously. The two of them ignored their injuries and rushed into the sky with all their might. They wanted to break the blood-red beam of light and save Ji Tianqing. However, the two of them had just rushed into the sky when the Demon King casually sent out two beams of blood-red light. They vomited blood and fell from the sky into the ruins. The two of them were already heavily injured. Now that they were heavily injured, their injuries were so severe that they could no longer fight. The Demon King was rapidly devouring Ji Tianqing's blood and was about to take his Kenshin bloodline. Ji Tianqing was also on the verge of losing consciousness. He seemed to see death approaching. At this critical moment, in the sky 100 miles away, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky. Crack! A dazzling golden light lit up in that wide fissure. It was as dazzling as the midday sun. Swish! That dazzling golden light was a giant golden sword that was 1,000 meters long. It was wreathed in divine golden flames and contained the power to destroy the world. In the blink of an eye, the divine golden sword cut across the sky and reached the battlefield. Boom! The divine golden sword struck the blood-red beam of light with lightning-like speed, causing it to explode with a dull thud. The dark red tentacles wrapped around Ji Tianqing's body instantly collapsed and dissipated into bloody light. Ji Tianqing was no longer bound and plummeted from the sky into the ruins. At this moment, his eyes were tightly shut and his vision had turned black. He was on the verge of losing consciousness. He was completely powerless to move. He lay quietly in the ruins, unable to even crawl up. The Demon King in the sky was also sent flying 10 miles by the divine golden sword, his arms erupting with bloody light. His face instantly paled, his eyes flashing with deep fear and shock. That damned scoundrel! As expected, he still came. The Demon King gloomily cursed. His brow furrowed as he weighed the pros and cons in his mind. At this moment, the dazzling divine golden sword floated in the sky, blotting out the sky with divine light and emitting a domineering aura. The Demon King hesitated for a moment before he made up his mind. He shouted at the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander unwillingly, "Let's go." Before he left, he glanced at Ji Tianqing and shouted angrily, "Little bastard, the next time we meet, I'll definitely take your life." With that, he turned around and fled with the severely injured Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. The two of them turned into streaks of bloody light and streaked across the sky like shooting stars. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the horizon. With the departure of the Demon King and the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, the battle was finally over. Peace returned to the world. However, everyone was severely injured and on the verge of death. They lay miserably in the ruins, unable to make a single sound. There was complete silence. The dark clouds that blotted out the sky gradually dispersed, and the sky became clear again. The divine golden sword that floated in the sky gradually turned transparent and finally disappeared. After about 15 minutes, Miracle Dr. Bailey was the first to regain his ability to move. He used a secret technique to suppress his injuries. After taking a few soul-level elixirs, he hurried to Bailey Ningsu's side to check on her. Fortunately, Bailey Ningsu was not breathing. She was on the verge of death, but she was not really dead. Miracle Dr. Bailey heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly took out a priceless life-prolonging elixir and fed it to Bailey Ningsu. He then channeled his energy to heal her. Chapter 9:18. Ji Tianqing lay in the ruins for an hour before he gradually regained consciousness. His true yuan was almost exhausted, and his injuries were so severe that his life was in danger. Fortunately, his ultimate sword physique, Greenwood spirit physique, and Kenshin bloodline gave him an extremely powerful self-healing ability. He struggled to get up and quickly took out a few pills to consume. He sat in the ruins and quickly recovered his true yuan. Dozens of miles away, at the edge of the battlefield, Yan, and Jiang Chen were also lying on the ground covered in blood. Although they did not participate in the battle, they were almost killed by the aftermath of the battle. A battle between spirit refinement realm experts was not something that they could participate in. They were not even qualified to watch. After an hour of recovery, the two of them regained their ability to move. They got up from the ground and hurriedly healed their injuries. Time passed quietly, and the sun in the sky gradually set to the west. Unknowingly, another hour had passed. At this moment, in the distant sky, there was a dazzling white light that was as fast as a meteor. Swoosh! In just a few breaths, the dazzling white light crossed dozens of miles in the sky and arrived above the ruins. The white light suddenly disappeared, and the figure of a human man appeared. This man looked to be in his 40s. He wore a black robe with a jade belt around his waist. Other than that, he had no other accessories. However, he did not need luxurious clothes. He had a majestic and domineering aura that looked down on the world. He also had the temperament of an otherworldly expert. He was the great Divine Master of the Imperial Residence, Divine Master Heiyu. Divine Master Heiyu stood in the sky and swept his gaze across the battlefield. He immediately saw the scene clearly. His expression was a little gloomy as he frowned. A hint of anger and worry flashed in his eyes. Swoosh! Divine Master Heiyu's figure flashed and teleported 1,000 meters away, landing beside Ji Tianqing. He scanned with his divine sense and saw that Ji Tianqing's injuries were quite serious. He was in a weakened state. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was closing his eyes to heal, he quickly reached out and shot a white light into Ji Tianqing's body. Immediately, the sacred white light wandered around Ji Tianqing's body and suppressed his internal injuries. PFFF. Ji Tianqing opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of black blood. His injuries improved a lot. He quickly ended the healing process and opened his eyes. He raised his head and saw God-tier Master Heiyu beside him. He quickly stood up and bowed. He said anxiously, God-tier Master Heiyu, you're finally here. On my way back to Zhongzhou with Yao Yao, I passed by this place and was intercepted by the Demon Emperor. He tried his best to use simple words to explain what had happened to Divine Master Heiyu. However, before he could finish his sentence, Divine Master Black Feather raised his hand and interrupted him. Say no more. I already know. Ji Tianqing was startled. He was puzzled. How did Divine Master Heiyu know about this? Could it be that Divine Master Black Feather had already predicted this? Pausing for a moment, he continued, the Nephilim King has captured Yun Yao and sealed Yun Yao in the soul refining bell. Yun Yao could die at any time. Divine Master Heiyu, please go and save Yun Yao. Hearing this news, Divine Master Heiyu frowned. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. Damn the Nephilim King. He actually captured Yun Yao. Could it be that he already knows about this? This thought flashed across Divine Master Heiyu's mind. His expression turned gloomy. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was worried, he quickly comforted him. Tianqing, you don't have to worry too much. Yun Yao's life is not in danger. The Nephilim King will not kill her. Moreover, even if I go after him now, the Nephilim King has already escaped. I can't catch up with him. Even if I can catch up with him, I can't save Yun Yao from him. This. Ji Tianqing was speechless. His face was filled with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. He knew that Divine Master Heiyu was telling the truth. Although the Nephilim King had only recovered his strength to the 7th level of the soul refining realm, he had hundreds of methods and secret techniques. In the entire Tianxian continent, only primordial soul realm experts like the Monarch and the Monarch Manor's Master could deal with the Nephilim King. At this moment, Divine Master Heiyu continued, Tianqing, the Divine Master in the Manor has already sent a message to me. Not only did the Nephilim King come to kill you, he even sent the Great Demon Commander and Dream Demon to attack Central State City. Now that Central State City is in chaos, I have to rush back to take charge of the situation. Follow me back to Central State City now. There is someone who wants to see you. Ji Tianqing frowned. He asked in confusion, Lord Divine Master, who wants to see me? You will know when you return to Central State City. Divine Master Heiyu did not say much. He quickly brought him into the sky and flew toward Central State City. Ji Tianqing recalled the divine golden sword that came from outer space and pierced through the air. He vaguely guessed something, but he could not be sure. His mood became even more complicated. In the blink of an eye, Divine Master He Yu brought him hundreds of miles away from the battlefield. Above the ruins, Divine Dr. Bailey circulated his energy to suppress Bailey Ningxu's injuries. He catalyzed the life-prolonging pill's medicinal efficacy and finally saved Bailey Ningxu's life. Yun Zhongqi's injuries were temporarily suppressed. He also hurried over to help. After that, the two of them brought the unconscious Bailey Ningxu and quickly left the ruins, returning to Cloud Spirit Palace. Yan, and Jiang Chen healed their injuries for 4 hours. After they recovered their ability to move, they also left the battlefield and rushed back to Central State City. After a few hours, Divine Master He Yu brought Ji Tianqing back to Central State City as fast as lightning. Even when they were still several dozen li away, Ji Tianqing could already see from the sky that Central Continent City was in a complete mess. There were flames everywhere, rising black smoke rising from the flames. Both inside and outside Central State City, the ground was filled with ravines and holes. It was obvious that a fierce battle had just taken place. In the moat below the city walls, the originally clear and surging water was dyed red by blood. It was like a river of blood. The air was filled with a thick smell of blood. High in the sky, there were still black demonic clouds that had yet to disperse. Many holes had been blasted open in the majestic city walls. The sturdy and thick walls were filled with cracks. Broken stones scattered on the ground and piled up into ruins. When Ji Tianqing followed Divine Master He Yu into the city, he saw that the city's scene was even more miserable. The ground was filled with holes and cracks. There were corpses of people and martial artists of various races lying everywhere. Blood dyed the ground red. It was truly a river of blood. The bustling streets were shattered like mirrors that had been smashed to pieces. The houses and palaces had also been destroyed into ruins by the great battle, leaving only a pile of broken walls, bricks, and rubble on the ground. From the southern city gate to the center of the city, at least 100 streets were destroyed. 100,000 houses were ruined. Such a miserable scene was as if 100,000 soldiers had fought in the city. Chapter 919. Corpses of commoners and martial artists of various races could be seen everywhere in the ruins. Of course, there were also some corpses of the Devil clan that were still emitting black fog and devil chi. There were also some martial artists who were lucky enough to survive but were heavily injured. They were buried in the ruins or lying in pools of blood, still groaning in pain. More than half of the southern city district had been destroyed by the battle and turned into ruins and scorched earth. When God Teacher He Yu and Ji Tianqing flew to the plaza in the city, they saw that the plaza was in a mess. Nearly 100,000 commoners and martial artists had gathered there. Originally, the plaza had been decorated into a banquet hall. There were lanterns and colored banners everywhere. Red lanterns were hung high, and the atmosphere was joyous. There were also thousands of tables in the plaza. On them were various dishes, pastries, fruits, and wine. But now, the banquet hall had become a temporary shelter. Countless tables had collapsed. Fruits, pastries, and wine were scattered on the ground. The red lanterns and red gauze curtains were tattered and scattered on the ground like rags. Many warriors, who were covered in wounds and bloodstains, gathered together, their faces bewildered and fearful. Everyone was silent. Their eyes were filled with fear and worry. They were still in a state of shock. Many city guards were patrolling in groups. They were treating the injured and cleaning up the ruins around the plaza. The princes of the monarch residence were also leading a large group of martial artists to search and rescue the surviving commoners. Most of the princes and martial artists were injured, but they had no time to care or treat their injuries. Ji Tianqing even saw Kun Wu and Ji Ku in the crowd. The siblings were injured, and their robes were stained with blood. He originally wanted to greet Kun Wu and Ji Ku and ask them what was going on. But Kun Wu and Ji Ku were busy searching for the injured. They hurried past the plaza and quickly rushed to the ruins after the battle. Ji Tianqing could only give up. He followed God teacher He Yu into the forest of divine monuments and returned to the monarch residence. An hour later, God teacher He Yu brought him back to the Black Feather Palace. The two of them waited in the main hall for 15 minutes. Then, two God teachers rushed in and reported to God teacher He Yu. The two God tier masters were a man and a woman. The man was from the demon clan. He was tall and thin, but his face was extremely handsome. The woman was from the water race's mermaid race. She had a soft and beautiful body and a pretty face. There was even a red fish scale on her forehead, which left a deep impression on others. Greetings, great God Master. The two God tier masters stood in the middle of the hall and bowed to God tier Master He Yu. Divine Master He Yu nodded slightly. His expression was solemn as he asked in a low voice, "Before I left, I specially instructed all of you to take charge of the city and be careful of the demonic emperor. I've only left for a few days. How could there be such a drastic change in the city? Tell me, what's going on?" The Devil Emperor did not personally come to Central Continent City, so who was it that destroyed the city to such a degree? The Demon Clan Divine Master cupped his hands and reported in a low voice, "Great Divine Master, it is the Demon Emperor's Great Demon Commander Dark Knight, and the Demon Emperor's military advisor, Dream Demon." Dream Demon? God tier Master He Yu frowned and asked doubtfully, "Didn't it possess the demon god scepter and follow the demonic emperor?" Everyone knew that Dream Demon could only possess the demon god scepter or in a person's dream realm to unleash unimaginable power. Once it left the demon god scepter and the dream realm, it did not have any destructive power. The Demon Clan Divine Master nodded and said, "Yes." Demon Commander Dark Knight brought the demon god scepter and snuck into the city after disguising himself. Dream Demon used the power of the demon god scepter to forcefully hypnotize the South City Gate guard and control his dream realm. Under the control of Dream Demon, the South City Gate guard closed the defensive formation and opened the South City Gate. Demon Commander Dark Knight took this opportunity to launch an attack. He used the demon god scepter to summon an army of 100,000 demonic souls and broke through the South City wall. He started a massacre in the city and killed his way to the city square. The mermaid race Divine Master continued, "After this happened, the city lord's manor mobilized the city guards and immediately went to stop them. When we received the news, we gathered all the princes and guards to fight the demonic souls. Although we fought bravely and did our best to stop the demonic soul army's attack. But it happened so suddenly and in such a hurry, we were unable to stop the demonic soul army's rampage and destruction. Demon Commander Dark Knight's strength far surpassed ours. Dream Demon used the power of the demon god scepter and was not something we could contend against. In the end, all the martial artists in the city and the elite guards of the powerful forces participated in the great battle against the demonic soul army. Although we fought a bloody battle for 4 hours, repelling Demon Commander Dark Knight and Dream Demon, exterminating tens of thousands of demonic soul army and defending Central Continent City, the South City Wall was destroyed. More than 100,000 houses were destroyed and close to 300,000 civilians were cruelly massacred. Nearly half of the city guards were killed and the martial artists of the various races suffered heavy casualties. Even the princes of the manor. At this point, the mermaid race Divine Master paused and hesitated. Divine Master Black Feather looked at her expressionlessly and said in a solemn tone, "Continue." The mermaid race Divine Master lowered her head slightly and said with a face full of shame, "Even the princes of the manor suffered heavy injuries. There were even 6 princes, who died prematurely in the battle." Upon hearing this news, the face of Divine Master Black Feather instantly darkened. He looked at the 2 Divine Masters with a pair of piercing eyes and said with a cold and imposing tone, "Each of the princes of the manor is the top genius of the land, a future elite warrior of the refined soul. It was only Demon Commander Dark Knight and Dream Demon causing trouble, yet you let 6 Supreme Princes die in this chaotic battle. There were hundreds of clans in the Tian Xian land and at least hundreds of billions of martial artists. Among the top genius martial artists of each clan, only a few dozen could enter the monarch mansion. On average, every 2 or 3 years, a new prince would enter the monarch mansion. Today, in this chaotic battle, the monarch mansion had lost 6 princes. How could Divine Master Blackfeather not be filled with anger for such a heavy loss? The 2 Divine Masters had already expected this result. When they felt the surging anger of Divine Master Blackfeather, instantly they lowered their heads with a face full of guilt. They said with a voice full of self-blame, "It's our carelessness and lack of consideration that caused the manor to suffer such heavy losses. Please punish us, great Divine Master." Divine Master Blackfeather took a deep breath to suppress the anger in his heart. He said with an indifferent tone, "The dead are gone. Those 6 princes have already died in battle. They sacrificed their lives to protect the central state city. Even if I were to punish you, what use would it be? You can only blame the demon clan for being too treacherous, despicable, and arrogant to the extreme. Sooner or later, the monarch mansion will take revenge for this grudge." The 2 Divine Masters also nodded with a solemn expression. Thick anger and murderous intentions surged from their eyes as they shouted with a cold tone. "In this Tian Xian land, no one can bully the monarch mansion." Chapter 920. After listening to the 2 God-tier masters' reports, God-tier Master He Yu and Ji Tianqing understood what had happened. Even though Central Continent City's losses were extremely disastrous, the casualties of martial artists and commoners reaching 300,000. However, Divine Master Blackfeather also knew that Demon General Dark Knight's strength was almost on par with his. Dream Demon, with the support of the Demon God Scepter, was not much weaker than him. Adding on the fact that everything happened so suddenly, no one was prepared for the demon race to attack Central Continent City, resulting in this kind of tragedy. The Divine Masters and Princes of the Imperial Residence were already doing their best. This was the result of them doing their best to resist the Devil's Soul Army without any regard for their own safety. They had already minimized their losses to a minimum. Therefore, Divine Sage He Yu did not reprimand the 2 Divine Sages. After pondering for a moment, he ordered the 2 Divine Masters to take the princes to the city to deal with the aftermath. Hundreds of thousands of homeless civilians and at least 100,000 injured martial artists and civilians needed to be pacified and dealt with as soon as possible. Hundreds of streets and hundreds of thousands of houses in the southern district had been reduced to scorched earth and ruins. They were in urgent need of reconstruction and repair. The power of the city lord's mansion alone was obviously insufficient for such a vast and tedious task. God-tier Master He Yu gave the 2 God-tier Masters a time limit of 10 days to deal with the aftermath and restore the South District to its original state. Time was of the essence, and the task was heavy. The 2 God-tier Masters did not dare to bargain, and they quickly left the Black Feather Palace to carry out the task. After the 2 Divine Masters left, Divine Master He Yu looked at Ji Tianqing and said solemnly, "Let's go. Follow me to the Imperial Palace." Imperial Palace? Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. As the Crown Prince of the Monarch Mansion, he naturally knew of the existence of the Imperial Palace. It was a mysterious ancient palace located in the deepest part of the monarch residence. It was also the most sacred palace in the monarch residence. The Imperial Palace had always existed since the establishment of the Imperial King residence. Only the successive palace masters were qualified to live in it. For nearly 200 years, the palace lord's whereabouts had always been a mystery. No one in the outside world had ever seen the palace lord's face. Even the few god-tier masters in the mansion didn't dare to get close to the Imperial Palace. Now, Divine Mentor He Yu wanted to bring him to the Imperial Palace. It was obvious that he wanted to bring him to meet the palace master. That was the publicly acknowledged #1 expert in the continent, the elusive Manor Lord. At the thought of this, Ji Tianqing's heartbeat quickened. He asked God Sage, "Hey you, Lord God Sage, could it be that the person you're talking about is, the Master?" Divine Master Black Feather didn't reply. He only nodded. Ji Tianqing asked in confusion, "Sir God Teacher, according to the rumors, the Prefecture Lord has not appeared for 200 years. He might have left the profound sky continent. Could it be that the Mansion Master was not like what the rumors said? Had he always been in the Emperor Mansion? Also, I've only been in the Imperial Residence for less than a year. What have I done to deserve the Manor Lord summons?" God Sage Black Feather looked at him calmly. He shook his head and said, "I cannot answer your questions. When you meet the Palace Lord, perhaps you'll know the answer. If the Manor Head doesn't want to talk about it, then it means that the time isn't right yet. You don't have to ask too much. Anyways, if you come with me to meet the Palace Lord, it will only bring you benefits." After he had finished speaking, he didn't explain any further. He took Ji Tianqing and left the Black Feather Palace. They flew towards the depths of the Imperial Residence. The two of them flew high in the sky filled with dense spiritual mist. They crossed the mountain ranges within 1,000 miles and flew towards the 10,000-meter-tall giant peak at the end of the horizon. That was the tallest mountain peak in the Imperial Residence. It occupied more than a few hundred miles and appeared extremely ancient and majestic. This mountain peak was extremely steep. It was surrounded by almost vertical cliffs and precipitous cliffs. The surface of the dark brown rocks had been eroded by the wind and frost over the years. Standing below this giant peak, it gave people the illusion that they would be able to touch the stars in the sky once they reached the peak of the mountain. More than half of the giant peak was covered by thick white clouds and mist. Along with the rolling clouds and mist, it appeared hazy and graceful, ancient and mysterious. Ji Tianqing followed Divine Master Black Feather and flew 10,000 meters in the sky. They landed on the mountain peak. The terrain of the mountain peak was relatively flat. It had a radius of 100 miles. What appeared in front of the two of them was a wide plaza in front of the palace. It was paved with ancient marble slabs and decorated with dark green ancient jade and gemstones. Around the plaza stood 8 statues. They were carved with the successive palace lords of the imperial residence. Each statue was 100 meters tall. The carvings were lifelike and revealed a domineering and majestic aura that looked down on the common people. On the other side of the plaza stood an ancient dark golden palace. It was faintly discernible in the clouds and mist. The palace had 3 floors and was 100 meters tall. It was extremely huge and majestic. However, the palace's walls, roof, and eaves were mottled with traces of vicissitudes. It was obvious that it had gone through countless years. This ancient and sacred palace was the residence of the Palace Lord, the Imperial Palace. It stood quietly at the peak of the mountain as if it was silently telling of the Imperial Residence's mysterious origins and majestic heritage. Divine Master Black Feather led Ji Tianqing through the plaza and walked towards the main entrance of the Imperial Palace. Outside the main entrance was a wide corridor. Between the corridor and the plaza were 99 white jade steps. The steps were engraved with cloud patterns. It made one feel as if they were walking on the steps and ascending to the heavens. When the two of them crossed the 99 steps and arrived at the entrance of the tall and majestic main hall, Divine Master Black Feather stopped. He turned his head to look at Ji Tianqing and said with a serious expression, "The Palace Lord summoned you alone. Enter the main hall alone and pay your respects to the Palace Lord. I won't follow you in. I'll wait outside the hall." After saying that, Divine Master Black Feather retreated to the side and gestured for him to enter. Ji Tianqing nodded. He looked at the tightly shut bronze door with a serious expression and stepped out. Although he looked calm, he was nervous and doubtful. He stood in front of the door. After taking a deep breath, he held the huge bronze door knocker and slowly pushed the door open. With a heavy creaking sound, the 30-meter-tall bronze door opened. A hazy light shone through the gap and into the dark main hall. The main hall was very spacious. He could see 6 huge pillars painted in red and gold. They were engraved with images of flying dragons and phoenixes. The main hall was empty. A thin layer of dust could be faintly seen on the dark gold floor tiles. Ji Tianqing hesitated for a moment before stepping into the main hall. He had just taken a few steps when the bronze door behind him automatically closed with a muffled bang. Immediately after that, hundreds of gemstone lamps lit up on the walls of the main hall. They emitted a dazzling spiritual light. The 5-colored brilliance immediately lit up the main hall. The gold bricks on the floor also reflected a dazzling golden light. The main hall that was previously cold and dark suddenly became brightly lit. It was golden and dazzling like the palace of the gods. At the same time, a deep and majestic voice of a man filled with vicissitudes came from the main seat of the main hall. Chapter 921. The voice that suddenly rang out did not seem out of place at all. Ji Tianqing could not determine the age of the speaker just from the voice alone. The voice had the dominance and majesty of a middle-aged man, as well as the vicissitudes of experience of an old man, and the open-mindedness and calmness of someone who understood the world. It was hard for Ji Tianqing to imagine what kind of expert was able to fuse these two completely different auras into his voice. He subconsciously raised his head and looked at the main seat in the north of the hall. He saw 2 6-meter-long golden bridges at the end of the hall. Under the exquisite and luxurious arch bridge was a small river flowing with colorful spiritual liquid. After crossing the golden bridge, there were 9 golden brick steps. On the steps was a platform with a radius of 10 meters. On the platform was a spacious, luxurious, and extremely honorable emperor's throne. On the left and right sides of the throne stood 2 3-meter-tall statues. One was dark gold, and the other was dark black. The dark gold statue on the left was a half-human, half-dragon, dragon man, holding a golden spear in his hand. It was a muscular and graceful man wearing golden armor. He had human limbs and a human head, but his skin was covered with golden dragon scales. Moreover, there was a golden dragon horn on his head. The dark statue on the right was a harpy that looked like an eagle. She had an enchanting figure and long legs. She wore short black armor and had a pair of wide and slender black wings. She held a bow in her hand. Although they were just 2 statues, they were extremely lifelike, as if they could come to life at any time. Ji Tianqing's eyes swept across the golden dragon man and the harpy, and his gaze fell on the throne. The 6-meter-wide dark gold throne was made of blazing fire gold and inlaid with tens of thousands of precious gems. There were also many ancient and mysterious patterns made of spiritual chalcedony and star mithril. A burly middle-aged man in a purple robe was sitting quietly on the throne. His nearly 2-meter-tall body contained an unparalleled majesty and the domineering aura of an expert who looked down on the world. His snow-white hair was tied up by a dark gold dragon rope and hung tame behind his head, showing a carefree and unrestrained temperament. The purple robe he was wearing had an ancient style and was embroidered with mysterious patterns. A dark golden cloak was draped over his shoulders and dragged on the ground, emitting a holy golden light. His face could not be considered handsome, but his appearance was dignified, upright, and dignified. His outline was tough and resolute as if it had been carved by a knife. His pair of dark and deep eyes were like a boundless abyss, yet also like the vast starry sky, and they contained experience and the ability to see through the hearts of others. Ji Tianqing only glanced at him once, and he felt as if his mind had been seen through. He did not dare to look directly into his eyes. Without a doubt, this mysterious yet domineering man was none other than the legendary monarch Manor Lord. Ji Tianqing walked into the hall, his mind full of doubts. He was still trying to figure out what the purple-robed man had said. "I've been waiting for you for a long time. You're finally back." The Manor Lord was a supreme expert at the Essence Soul realm. True body was what he called himself. But why did he wait for me for so long? How long is a long time? A few days? Or a few years? Are you referring to me? Or the Kenshin bloodline? What do you mean by, finally back? I've never been to the Imperial Palace. How can I be back? Ji Tianqing felt that the Manor Lord's words had a deeper meaning, but he could not understand or guess it. After a while, he walked into the hall and stood still. He faced the Manor Lord on the throne and bowed respectfully. The Imperial Prince, Ji Tianqing, pays his respects to the Prefecture Lord. The Manor Lord looked at him calmly and said in a dignified voice, "Rise." Ji Tianqing did not get up. He continued to maintain his salute and said sincerely, "The Crown Prince thanks the Manor Head for saving his life. If it wasn't for the Manor Head, the Crown Prince would have died." He knew very well that the divine golden sword that had appeared from outer space must have come from the Manor Lord. Only the strongest person in the continent could make the demonic emperor so fearful and retreat on the spot. The Manor Lord nodded slightly and said calmly, "You may rise. I was hundreds of thousands of miles away at that time. I could only use my sword to save you. If you were killed by the demonic emperor, not only would the Kenshin inheritance be severed, but the Kenshin bloodline would also be taken away by the demonic emperor. If the demonic emperor obtains the Kenshin bloodline, he will be like a tiger that has grown wings. Not only will he be able to recover to his peak faster, but he will also be able to remove the curse and shackles." At this point, the mansion master paused and didn't continue speaking. However, Ji Tianqing knew that once the demonic emperor obtained his Kenshin bloodline, the demonic emperor would become even more powerful. That would definitely be a nightmare and disaster for all the races in the world. He frowned and said to the Manor Lord worriedly, "Manor Lord, the demonic emperor captured Yun Yao and suppressed Yun Yao in the soul refining bell. Yun Yao may die at any time. The prince begs the Manor Lord to save her. Only you can save her." Since Yun Yao was captured, his heart had been tightly clenched. He was very worried and anxious. Therefore, he could not help but ask the Manor Lord for help. However, the Manor Lord shook his head gently and said calmly, "Yun Yao's life will not be in danger. The demonic emperor will not kill her. However, the demonic emperor has already escaped from Zhongzhou. Even if I chase after him, I will not be able to catch up. We can only plan this slowly in the future." How could Ji Tianqing wait until the future? Right now, he only wanted to save Yun Yao as soon as possible and see Yun Yao return to the monarch mansion safe and sound. "Manor Lord, why are you so sure that the demonic emperor will not kill Yun Yao? You don't need to know about this for now. You will understand in the future," the Manor Lord replied expressionlessly. Ji Tianqing frowned. He was still unwilling to give up and continued, "Manor Lord, the demonic clan is so rampant now. The demonic emperor is causing trouble and harming the people of all races. As the Manor Lord of the monarch mansion and the strongest person in the continent, are you going to sit back and do nothing?" As the emperor's son, it was disrespectful for him to question the Manor Lord like this. However, the Manor Lord was not angry. He said calmly, "Even if I personally go to the demonic nest in the northern desert, I will not be able to kill the demonic emperor, let alone rescue Yun Yao alive. We cannot rush to kill the demonic clan. You know too little about the demonic clan." In fact, the Manor Lord did not explain one thing, and he could not explain it to Ji Tianqing. When he ascended the ninth heaven platform, he was severely injured by the ninth heaven divine thunder and only had 50% of his power left. He had been in seclusion for 20 years to recuperate, but he had only recovered 70% of his power. There were still hidden injuries in his body that had not healed. Ji Tianqing fell silent. He was anxious and unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. If he did not hear it with his own ears, he would not believe that the Manor Lord, the strongest person in the continent, could not destroy the demonic nest and kill the demonic emperor. After a moment of silence, he made up his mind and said firmly, since the Manor Lord is not willing to save Yunyao, I will save her myself. She is my wife. We have bowed to heaven and earth and made a vow to live and die together. Chapter 922. The mansion master was not surprised at all by Ji Tianqing's reaction. It was within his expectations. He looked at Ji Tianqing calmly and said, with your current strength, it's impossible for you to save Yunyao. Even if you enter the northern desert, it's like hitting a rock with an egg. You'll die without a doubt. Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. His eyes were filled with determination as he said in a serious tone, of course, Your Highness, you know that. But in life, there are things you should and shouldn't do. There are some things you have to fight for even though you know it's hopeless. You know that the outcome may be a tragedy and death, but you can't do nothing because you're afraid of death. Yunyao is my wife. No matter how dangerous it is, I have to save her, even if I have to die. When Ji Tianqing said these words, an invisible aura surged from his body. He was determined and fearless. He was mentally prepared that the mansion master might persuade him to give up and not be stubborn. Or perhaps, the mansion master would laugh at him for being stupid and overestimating himself. He was courting death. But he had made up his mind. No matter what others said, he would not waver. After a moment of silence, the mansion master said in a low voice, actually, you still have a long way to go. You have the Kenshin bloodline. You still have a lot of things to bear. Dealing with the Demon Emperor and the Devil Clan is not your ultimate goal and mission. There are more shocking mysteries waiting for you to uncover and more important missions waiting for you to complete. Many years later, you might even leave this continent. Why do you have to focus on the Devil Clan and the Demon Emperor? Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, May I ask, Mansion Master, what shocking mysteries and missions are there? The Mansion Master shook his head slightly and said in a low voice, You're not qualified to know now. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. He said calmly, If that's the case, then I'll wait until Your Highness is qualified to know. Please tell Your Highness then. The most important thing now is to rescue Yunyao as soon as possible. The more time we delay, the more dangerous it will be for her. When the palace master saw how determined he was, he no longer tried to persuade him. Instead, he said in a low voice, Fine. Since you're so determined, I'll give you a clear path. If you want to save Yunyao, you can't rush into the northern desert. You have to improve your strength quickly. Only when you reach the soul refining realm can you enter the northern desert. Moreover, Kenshin was the nemesis of the demons. Legend has it that when he fell, his divine sword fell into the great swamp of the southern wasteland, and no one had been able to find it until now. If you can find that broken sword in the great swamp of the southern wasteland, it will certainly be of great help to your martial arts and swordsmanship. It will make your strength increase even faster. Ji Tianqing had already inquired about the divine sword from God-teacher Black Feather and the burial of heaven. Of course, he knew that if he could find that broken sword, not only would he be able to help Burial of Heaven recover quickly, but it would also be of great help to his sword cultivation. Even if the broken sword was hidden in the great swamp of the southern wasteland, it was very hidden and mysterious, and no one had found it for thousands of years. However, with the help of the Burial of Heaven, there was a great chance that he could find the broken sword. Thinking of this, he nodded and said to the palace master, Thank you for your advice, Palace Master. After the Emperor is ready, he will go to the great swamp of the southern wasteland. The Palace Master nodded slightly and continued, Also, if you want to save Yunyao from the Demon King, it's impossible for you to do it alone. You have to form your own force. Only with the help of a powerful force and powerhouses can you successfully save Yunyao from the demon's nest. My own force? Ji Tianqing had a puzzled look on his face. He subconsciously thought of Yan, Ji Ku, Kunwu, Yun Zhongqi, and Miracle Dr. Bailey. Among these people, only Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey had reached the soul refining realm and could compete with the demon powerhouses. However, with only Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey's help, it was still impossible for him to save Yunyao. The palace master narrowed his eyes slightly and revealed a solemn look. He said in a serious tone, 1,000 years ago, before Kenshin left the Tianxian continent, he took in 4 followers. The 4 followers had received favors from Kenshin, were either enlightened by Kenshin, or were saved by Kenshin. They were all loyal to Kenshin. Although Kenshin had never taken in any disciples, the 4 of them treated Kenshin as his disciples and regarded themselves as his disciples. After Kenshin disappeared, the 4 of them went their separate ways and scattered to different places in the Tianxian continent to develop and form their own forces. Now, perhaps they are still alive in the world and should be top powerhouses with huge forces. If you can find them and get their help with your ability, you will have a greater chance to save Yunyao. Ji Tianqing listened attentively to the palace master's narration of Kenshin's deeds. Strange lights flashed across his eyes and he could not help but have questions in his mind. He hesitated for a moment and probed, "Palace master, may I ask what is your relationship with Kenshin? Why do you know so much about Kenshin's deeds?" The palace master's expression did not change as he answered with a calm tone, "The monarch mansion has been established for almost 10,000 years. In the Tianxian continent, there are not many things that the monarch mansion does not know. Not to mention, Kenshin's name shook the Tianxian continent and he had some relationship with the monarch mansion. How could I not know this information?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and did not pursue this matter. He returned to the previous question and asked the palace master, "Palace master, may I ask who were Kenshin's 4 followers? Where should the emperor go to find them?" After a moment of silence, the palace master answered with a solemn tone, "After thousands of years, I don't know where they went or where they are now. Regarding their information, I can only tell you one thing. Remember the 4 words, Guyi Xiao Shui. As for whether you can find them and get their help, it will depend on fate and your ability." Guyi Xiao Shui. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and silently repeated these 4 words. However, he was completely baffled and couldn't understand the profoundness within them at all. "Palace master, could it be you don't have any more information? The Tianxian continent is so vast and boundless, how can I find them with just these 4 words?" However, the palace master did not answer this question and said with an aged and distant tone, "Ji Tianqing, do you believe in fate?" "Fate?" Ji Tianqing looked at him in confusion and said with a heart full of confusion, "What does this have to do with me finding the 4 followers of Kenshin?" The palace master avoided the question and did not answer. He looked at the entrance of the main hall and his eyes became somewhat blurred and deep. He said meaningfully, "Sometimes, when you think that you can conquer the heavens and control your own fate, in the end, you will realize that you are still following the arrangement of fate and stepping on the path predestined by the unseen." Ji Tianqing frowned and did not speak. He vaguely understood what he meant, but after thinking carefully, he did not say anything. The palace master seemed to have recalled his past. His aura became deep and profound as he said in a low voice, "That's all I have to say. After you're ready, go to the great swamp of the southern wasteland and look for that divine sword." Chapter 923. Ji Tianqing saw that the palace master did not want to say anything more, so he bowed and left. When he stepped through the bronze gate and left the palace, God teacher He Yu was waiting for him under the eaves. Hearing the footsteps, God teacher He Yu turned around and asked, "Tianqing, did you see the palace master? Did you learn anything?" Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "You can say that I gained something. The mansion master's words are too mysterious and meaningful. It's hard to fathom." God teacher He Yu nodded and said calmly, "The palace master is a primordial spirit supreme with a lifespan of over 1,000 years. He is not an ordinary cultivator. Of course, he is different." While talking, the 2 of them left the palace and flew back to the Heiyu palace. On the way back, God teacher Heiyu asked, "Tianqing, what are you going to do next?" Ji Tianqing said with a solemn face, "Master, I might have to leave the monarch mansion for a long time. I have to save Yunyao. No matter how dangerous the demon nest is, I will not turn back. However, I am too weak now. Before going to the northern desert demon nest, I have to go to the southern wilderness swamp. I have to find that broken sword and find a way to improve my strength quickly. As for the 4 followers of the sword god, he did not mention a single word. Even the palace master did not know about it. God teacher Heiyu might not know about it. It was useless for him to say it. God teacher Heiyu thought for a while and nodded, that is good too. Don't worry and go. Although you are talented and your speed of improvement is unprecedented, you have not reached the soul refining stage. It is impossible for you to save Yunyao. You have been in the sky origin stage for a long time. Go to the southern wilderness swamp and experience the dangers of life and death. Maybe you will have a chance to break through. Tianqing, when are you going to leave? Ji Tianqing answered honestly, of course, the sooner the better. But before I leave, I have some trivial matters to deal with. God teacher Heiyu nodded and took out a jade box from his space ring and gave it to him. Ever since I announced that I would personally teach you, all the imperial princes in the mansion have been envious of you. However, what they don't know is that I have yet to guide you in your cultivation. You're about to go to the southern wasteland Great Swamp. That's one of the most dangerous forbidden areas on the continent. Even soul refinement realm experts may not be able to escape unscathed. I'll give you 3 soul-level medicinal pills. Take them. They might come in handy at a critical moment. Soul-level medicinal pills could only be refined by soul refinement realm alchemy grandmasters. Each pill was priceless and incomparably precious. Ji Tianqing took a deep look at God Master Black Feather before reaching out to take the jade box. He then bowed and thank you for your gift, God Master. Priest Heiyu slightly nodded, then continued in a serious tone, the southern wasteland Great Lake is very dangerous and complicated. Not only are there all kinds of unexpected dangers, some ancient clans and forces are also hiding there. You must be very careful in your actions. Before entering the great swamp of the southern wasteland, it's best that you understand it clearly. The Crown Prince will remember the teachings of the Divine Master. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. God Master Black Feather didn't say anything else. He left first and returned to the Black Feather Palace. Ji Tianqing put the jade box containing the 3 soul-level medicinal pills into his space ring and continued to fly to the Tianqing Palace. After an hour, he returned to the Tianqing Palace. He first took out the seal of mountains and rivers and settled the hundreds of guards and maids in the space ring in the Tianqing Palace. Then, he began to heal his injuries. Earlier, God Master Black Feather helped him suppress his injuries. However, his internal injuries hadn't healed yet. His strength was still very weak. In order to recover his injuries and strength as soon as possible, he took out a few spirit pills and consumed them. Then, he entered the room to cultivate. After 2 days, with the help of the spirit pills and his powerful self-healing ability, his injuries finally recovered by more than half. He was fine for the time being. At this moment, footsteps were heard outside the door. A guard captain came to reporting to the region lord. His Majesty the Emperor has come to visit. He's waiting for you in the guest hall. When Ji Tianqing heard the news, he hurriedly finished healing his injuries and left the room. When he rushed to the guest hall, he saw Long Yun Shao in a golden robe. He was standing in the hall with a gloomy face, thinking about something. Son of Heaven, you've come. Ji Tian walked into the main hall, clasped his hands and greeted him. Long Yun Shao turned his head to look at him. His face was cold and his eyes were bloodshot. His eyes were filled with anger and anxiety. 2 days ago, it was the day you and Yao Yao got married. The city square was changed into a banquet hall. A big banquet was held and all the people in the city were invited to celebrate. I arrived at the banquet hall with the heavenly concubine. I endured the sadness and jealousy in my heart, waiting for you and Yao Yao to come back. I wanted to drink a cup of wine and congratulate you in person. But what was the result? The demon soul army broke into the central state city and slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people. The banquet hall was turned into ruins. The 800 people in the wedding procession were all killed. Uncle Yun and Divine Dr. Bailey were seriously injured and on the verge of death. Madame Yun's fate is unknown. Yao Yao was also captured by the demon emperor. Long Yun Zhao's entire body was emitting a cold anger. When he talked about what happened that day, his entire body trembled. These 2 days, he had been busy in the city dealing with the aftermath. He had treated the injured and comforted the homeless people. He had not slept for a moment. Until just now, when he received the news from his subordinates from Cloud Spirit Palace, he knew that the result was so serious. He was unable to restrain his anger. He was so angry that he almost lost his mind. He rushed to Tianqing Palace without caring about anything else. He wanted to find Ji Tianqing and explain everything to him. Therefore, his tone was angry and manic. His eyes were almost red. Ji Tianqing. Why did Yao Yao encounter so many disasters when she met you? Why is her life on the verge of death now? I hate that I shouldn't have retreated. I shouldn't have given Yao Yao to you. Why was the one captured by the demon emperor Yao Yao and not you? Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly. When he finished his angry roar, he said indifferently, "So, you came here today to denounce me? So what if I did?" Long Yun Shao was even more furious. He clenched his fists so hard that they creaked. He was almost unable to restrain his anger. At this time, another figure rushed in from the entrance of the main hall. He entered the main hall as fast as the wind. "Your Majesty, please don't be impulsive." The person who came was Kun Wu. He was travel-worn like Long Yun Shao. His face was full of fatigue and his aura was weak. Even the fox fur coat he wore was stained with blood. He did not even have time to clean it up. It was obvious that he had been dealing with the aftermath of Central State City for the past 2 days. He had not been idle for a moment. Kun Wu came to the main hall and stopped in front of Tianqing. He said sincerely, "Tianqing, you can't blame this on Tianqing. You can only blame the demon emperor for being too despicable and vicious. The demon race is too cruel and tyrannical." That day was supposed to be Tianqing and Yun Yao's big day. They should be the happiest people in the world. Who would have thought that the demon emperor would make trouble that day? He did not care about his status as a powerhouse and directly attacked Tianqing and Yun Yao. The tragedy has already happened. Yun Yao has been captured by the demon emperor. Tianqing is the one who is suffering the most. His anger and anxiety are not any less than yours. Tianqing, you don't comfort Tianqing but blame him like this. Can you still be considered his friend? Long Yun Shao immediately fell silent. He took a deep breath to suppress his anger and calm down. Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and said coldly, "Yao Yao is my wife. She was captured by the demon emperor. I am more angry than anyone else. But is anger useful? Can anger make the demon emperor afraid and stop stirring up trouble and killing innocent people? If you are done venting, please leave. I still need to go into seclusion to heal my injuries. I need to do something very important." Chapter 924. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Kun Wu and Long Yun Shao frowned. His tone was very firm and resolute. The two of them did not doubt his attitude and determination. However, the two of them could not see that he had any hope of saving Yun Yao. Kun Wu looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, "Tianqing, even Asgard Master Yun and Divine Dr. Bailey could not stop the Devil Emperor. How can you save Yun Yao? Even if you want to save Yun Yao, you have to ask for help from someone stronger. For example, God Master He Yu." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said calmly, God Master He, you might not be a match for the Devil Emperor. Long Yunxiao hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, if there is no other way, I will return to the imperial court now and beg the emperor to help. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said indifferently, even the prefecture master might not be able to do it. How can the emperor save Yunyao? Moreover, as the leader of the human race, how can the emperor barge into the devil race's lair alone for Yunyao? Long Yunxiao was speechless. He frowned and did not say anything. Kuan Wu, on the other hand, heard some clues and asked doubtfully, Tianqing, could it be that the prefecture master has shown himself? Have you seen the prefecture master? Ji Tianqing did not say anything and only nodded. Kuan Wu and Long Yunxiao looked at each other and were shocked. After a moment of silence, Kuan Wu continued to ask, Tianqing, did the prefecture master enlighten you? Where are you going? How are you going to save Yunyao? Ji Tianqing knew that Kuan Wu and Long Yunxiao were trustworthy people. He did not hide anything from them and said, I am going to the southern wasteland Great Swamp to complete a big task and find an opportunity to break through. I cannot rush to save Yao Yao. I can only try my best to increase my strength and find all possible opportunities. Kuan Wu nodded in agreement and said, that's right. The Devil Emperor is very powerful and the Devil race's lair is unfathomable. They have a deep and mysterious foundation. You must not act recklessly. Tianqing, when do you plan to leave? Ji Tianqing silently calculated the time, and said, in about 5 days, I will leave the central continent alone, and go to the great swamp of the southern wasteland. Kuan Wu nodded again. She took out 2 boxes from her spatial ring and placed them in front of him. Tianqing, the southern wasteland's great lake is extremely dangerous. This time, I can't help you much. These are some elixirs, magical tools, and talismans. Although they are not very powerful treasures, they can help you solve the problem of resource consumption in the short term. Seeing that Ji Tianqing wanted to refuse, he added, Tianqing, you don't have to refuse. Even if it's for Ku's sake, you must accept it. At the mention of Ji Ku, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, but he didn't refuse and put the 2 boxes into his spatial ring. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, Kuan Wu, how's Ku doing recently? Kuan Wu revealed a complicated expression. She sighed and said, ever since she recovered from her injuries, she seems to have changed into a different person. She is depressed all day, and immerses herself in bitter cultivation. In these 2 days, she has been following me to deal with the aftermath of the incident, and to appease the people in the city. She is busy as if she doesn't know what fatigue is. I don't know what kind of stimulation she received, but it really makes me worried. Ji Tianqing felt a slight pain in his heart. He vaguely understood something, but he couldn't open his mouth. At this time, Long Yunxiao also took out a wash-basin-sized treasure box, and handed it to him. Then, he said in a serious tone, Ji Tianqing, I hope you can survive and successfully rescue Yao Yao. I can't help you in this matter. I can only give you some elixirs and spirit stones. After the situation in the city stabilizes, I will do my best to punish the Murong family, and won't let them have the chance to deal with you again. Ji Tianqing took a deep look at him. After a moment of silence, he accepted the treasure chest that he had given him. After that, Kuan Wu and Long Yunxiao gave him a few words of advice, and then left together. After the 2 left, Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, and then went to the study to write a letter to a guard, and ordered him to deliver it to Cloud Soul Palace. Divine Dr. Bailey and Yun Zhongqi were both seriously injured, and would need to recuperate for at least a few years to recover. Although Bailey Ningsu's life was saved, she was still unconscious. It was unknown when she would recover. In the letter, he sent his regards to the 3 elders, and told them of his plan. After the guard left Tianqing Palace with the secret letter, he prepared to return to his room and circulate his energy to treat his injuries. But not long after, a guard came to report that the master, Yan, and Jiang Chen had returned. Ji Tianqing had been waiting for his father's return. When he heard the news, he hurried to see him. When he went back to the central province to marry Yun Yao, his father's identity was not suitable for him to go with the wedding procession, so he stayed at Cloud Soul Palace for half a day before leaving. He did not expect that his father would escape a disaster because of this. When Ji Tianqing rushed to the main hall in the front yard, he saw his father, Yan, and Jiang Chen. The three of them were travel-worn, and their faces were full of anxiety. Yan, and Jiang Chen were both seriously injured, and their bodies were stained with blood. Ji Chankong's face was the gloomiest, and his mood was the most chaotic. When he saw Ji Tianqing, he hurriedly asked, "Tianqing, what happened? How did a good wedding turn out like this?" Seeing that his son was about to get married, he was extremely gratified and happy. However, in the blink of an eye, the wedding was ruined, hundreds of people were slaughtered, and the central province city was in a mess. His daughter-in-law Yun Yao was even taken away by the demon emperor. How could he not be shocked and angry? When he heard the news, he was so angry and anxious that he almost vomited blood on the spot. However, he was the same as Ji Tianqing. Both father and son had tenacity in their bones, and their minds were firm and calm. Ji Tianqing hurriedly supported him and comforted him, "Father, don't worry. Yao Yao's life is not in danger for the time being. I will do everything I can to save her as soon as possible." Of course, Ji Chankong knew that this matter was not that simple. He was full of worry and advised him not to be reckless. Next, Ji Tianqing asked about Yan, and Jiang Chen's injuries. After confirming that they were fine, he said to Ji Chankong, "Father, I will leave the central province in a few days. I may be away for a long time. You and Jiang Chen will stay in the palace for the time being. When Jiang Chen recovers, he will escort you back to the Tianqin domain. You can wait for news in the domain chief's manor." After saying that, he looked at Yan, and asked, "Yan, I will be going out alone for a long time. You stay in the palace and recuperate." Although Yan, was a little reluctant, he still pulled himself together and said in a firm tone, "Senior brother Tianqing, I know that you are going to save senior sister and will definitely experience life and death dangers. Yan, I can't help you. I only hope that you can be careful and turn misfortune into blessing. You can successfully save senior sister." After this incident, the central province city is also in chaos. Master and Grand Elder must be very worried. "Senior brother, you just have to take care of your matters. I will go to the Qingfeng courtyard to find Master and Grand Elder and explain it to them. Since you are not in the Monarch Manor, I will not stay here either. I will go back to the Sky Pillar sect in the Tianqin domain with Master and Grand Elder." Hearing Yan, words, Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's good too. When you, Master, and Grand Elder return to the Tianqin domain, it's best to bring my father and Jiang Chen along. You can go back to the Tianqin domain together so that you can take care of each other on the way." Everyone came to an agreement on this matter. Ji Chankong, Yan, and Jiang Chen left the hall to recuperate and heal their injuries. Ji Tianqing also returned to his room and continued to circulate his energy to heal his injuries. Unknowingly, 4 days had passed. On the morning of the 5th day, his injuries had mostly healed and his cultivation had recovered to 80%. Chapter 925. Ji Tianqing left the monarch mansion alone and rushed towards the south gate of Central Continent City. He only brought Qian Yu and the little black dragon with him. All the resources and treasures were in the space ring. The journey to the great swamp of the southern wasteland was hundreds of millions of miles away. He had to pass through the entire southern continent. He was prepared to go through all kinds of difficulties and dangers. While flying towards the south gate, he looked down at the south city from the sky. He saw that the south city that had been destroyed by the flames of war a few days ago was being rebuilt in full swing. The god masters of the monarch mansion sat in the center, commanding the many princes and city guards to lead the people in rebuilding their homes. Hundreds of destroyed streets had been restored to their original state. More than half of the hundreds of thousands of ruined houses had been rebuilt. There were fewer and fewer homeless people. Everyone worked together to rebuild their homes. The progress of the project was very fast. In at most 2 or 3 days, the South City would be restored to its original state. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing felt a little comforted in his heart. Not long after, he landed in front of the South Gate. The damaged and collapsed city walls and gates had been repaired long ago. There were dozens of city guards strictly guarding them. He showed his identity token to the city guards and went out of the city through the city gate. However, just as he walked out of the city gate and was about to fly into the sky, he caught a glimpse of a young girl in a fiery red dress standing on the main road outside the city gate. The young girl had a pair of golden raccoon ears. Her face was very beautiful and cute. Her temperament was also graceful and luxurious. She stood quietly on the side of the main road and looked at the city gate with a calm expression. She was obviously waiting for someone. She was Ji Ku. When Ji Tianqing saw her, he was stunned and stopped in his tracks. Ji Ku also stared at him. Her clear eyes revealed a faint smile as she quickly went up to him. "Ku, why are you here?" Ji Tianqing walked up to her and asked with some confusion. Ji Ku pouted her little mouth and said with a somewhat reproachful tone, "Brother Tianqing, you are too despicable. You actually wanted to sneak away alone and didn't even bring me along. If I didn't ask Brother Kunwu, I would still be kept in the dark by you." Ji Tianqing immediately understood the reason. With an apologetic look on his face, he persuaded, "Ku, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide it from you, but I can't take you with me. You can stay in Central Continent City or return to the Fei Imperial Court to cultivate in peace." Ji Ku frowned and said solemnly, "Big Brother Tianqing, Big Senior Sister has been taken away by the damned Devil Emperor. I know you are very angry and sad. I understand how you feel. You want to rescue eldest Senior Sister and go to the great swamp of the southern wasteland alone to complete an important task. You want to bear all the pain and danger by yourself, and you don't want to bring trouble to us." Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. However, Ji Ku's words were his true thoughts. Ji Ku had grown up with him. The two of them were childhood sweethearts. Ji Ku understood him better than anyone else. "But Big Brother Tianqing, this matter is not your fault. You are the one who has suffered the most. Why do you want to bear all the sin and danger by yourself? Yun Yao is your wife, my big senior sister, and my friend. I also want to go to the great swamp of the southern wasteland with you. I want to take risks with you, grow stronger with you, and save eldest senior sister together. Your long-cherished wish is my goal. I will only be happy when you are happy." Ji Ku looked at Ji Tianqing with a resolute gaze. Her tone revealed an unquestionable persistence. She loved Ji Tianqing deeply and would not change her mind even in death. After going through all the hardships and tribulations, she was no longer the naive, and lively girl from before. She already understood her own heart and also understood that love was not about asking and receiving, but about giving and waiting. She loved Ji Tianqing, so she loved everything about him and loved what he loved. She was willing to share the joys and sorrows with him and forge ahead. Ji Tianqing was a little moved, but he also felt a little helpless. He sighed and said, "Ku, why are you doing this? What you should do now is to stay in the imperial court and cultivate in peace. You and your parents have been separated for many years. Now that you have finally reunited, you should spend more time with them." Ji Ku shook her head and said in a calm and firm tone, "Imperial father and imperial mother want to take charge of the demon race and fight against the invasion of the demon army. Big Brother Kunwu has also been working hard to become stronger and achieve the unification and peace of the demon race. I also want to work hard for my own goal. Big Brother Tianqing, I will accompany you through these most difficult days and do my best to help you save eldest senior sister. In short, I don't care, I want to follow you. When we left Clear Sky Country together and went to Sky Pillar Sect, you promised to take care of me forever and not abandon me. Big brother Tianqing, don't try to deny it, and don't even think about abandoning me. She was still trying to reason with Ji Tianqing at first, but when she saw that Ji Tianqing was still unwilling to agree, she returned to her lively personality and pulled on his arm like a spoiled child. Ji Tianqing knew that she had already made up her mind and could not be persuaded no matter what, so he could only nod and agree to this matter. Alright, Cuckoo, I can promise to take you with me. But you have to inform Kunwu and your parents so that they won't worry. Ji Ku revealed a faint smile and nodded, don't worry, big brother Tianqing, I left a letter for them last night. Ji Tianqing nodded and did not say anything else. He took her and left the southern city gate. He released Qian Yu from the 100 treasures brocade pouch and sat on Qian Yu's back with Ji Ku. They flew into the sky like a bolt of lightning and flew towards the south. In the recent few months, Qian Yu rarely showed himself and was unable to help Ji Tianqing fight. It had always been sleeping in the 100 treasures brocade pouch, silently cultivating and working hard to improve its strength. Now, its strength had already reached the 9th level of the Origin Core stage and was about to break through to the Heaven Origin stage. But it had always been stuck at a bottleneck, and its strength had been shackled. However, after Ji Tianqing used his spiritual sense to carefully investigate its situation, he told it not to worry and just let nature take its course. It would definitely be able to break through to the Heaven Origin stage within 1 or 2 months at most. The little black dragon situation was similar to Qian Yu. It had always been stuck around the 9th level of the Origin Core stage and was unable to break through to the Heaven Origin stage. The little black dragon had discussed this problem with Ji Tianqing before. Ji Tianqing helped it check its situation and even specially consulted the Beast King. The Beast King's conclusion was that the little black dragon situation was rather special. Its body lacked the dragon crystal that was essential to the dragon clan, so it was basically impossible for it to reach the Heaven Origin stage. Unless it could find its dragon crystal, its strength would not be restricted and would be able to continue growing rapidly. Ji Tianqing had always remembered this matter and did not forget the agreement he made with the little black dragon. Now that his strength was strong enough, he still had to pass through the Heavenly Star region and Yong'an region on his way to the Southern Desolation Swamp. So, he had already made up his mind to make a trip to the Divine Hui sect when he passed through the Yong'an region. Chapter 926. The setting sun hung on the horizon and was about to disappear. The dim yellow sunlight shone on the sea of clouds and enveloped Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku. The two of them flew high in the sky on Qian Yu and were already far away from Continent Center City. If Ji Tianqing went to the southern wasteland swamp alone, the journey would definitely be boring. However, with Ji Ku accompanying him and talking to him along the way, it was not boring. Ji Ku and him reminisced about the past and talked about some interesting things in Clear Sky Kingdom when they were young. When they talked about funny things, the two of them would smile and let out a light laugh. Ji Ku knew that Ji Tianqing was bitter and uncomfortable in his heart, so she deliberately told him some interesting childhood stories to cheer him up and help him relieve his worries. Of course, Ji Tianqing could see her good intentions, and he could also feel her concern. He secretly sighed in his heart. In these 2 years, Cuckoo has also experienced a lot of ups and downs. She has grown and changed a lot, especially in terms of her temperament. The two of them chatted along the road and the atmosphere was very harmonious. With Ji Ku's help, Ji Tianqing's worries and bitterness were alleviated by a lot. Unknowingly, night fell. The world was dark and the cold wind in the sky was biting cold. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku gradually stopped chatting and quieted down. They sat on Qian Yu's back and closed their eyes to rest, thinking about their own matters. After a while, Qian Yu was flying over a vast mountain range. Under the curtain of night, the mountain range was covered with dark green forests and there was a faint mist rising. When Qian Yu was about to cross a 1,000 feet tall mountain, Ji Tianqing suddenly felt a strange aura. He suddenly opened his eyes, and a sharp glint flashed through his eyes. Qian Yu, stop! Although Qian Yu did not know what was going on, it stopped flying without hesitation and floated in the sky 1,000 meters away from the mountain peak. Old Ji, what's wrong? Ji Ku was also awakened. He looked at Ji Tianqing in confusion and asked, Brother Tianqing, what happened? Ji Tianqing's face was as dark as water. His eyes were sharp as he stared at the mountain in front of him. He said in a deep voice, there are fluctuations of a formation on that mountain. It should be a formation and an ambush. Someone is lying in ambush? Ji Ku immediately frowned, and his gaze turned serious. Right at this moment, a huge pale red light barrier lit up at the peak of the mountain, sealing off an area of 5 kilometers. With the mountain peak as the center, the sky within a radius of 5 kilometers was shrouded in a dark red light screen, illuminating the night sky in a dark red color. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, and Qian Yu were also enveloped by the dark red light and felt an invisible pressure. Immediately afterward, a few beams of spiritual light flashed from the top of the mountain and flew over as fast as lightning. A total of 5 dazzling spiritual lights flew to 1,000 meters away from Ji Tianqing in the blink of an eye and stopped in the sky. After the lights faded, the figures of 5 divine prime cultivators were revealed. The 5 of them stood proudly in the night sky, looking coldly at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku. There was a sinister sneer on their faces. The leader standing at the very front was an elegant young master dressed in a blue robe. His face was as beautiful as a woman's. He held a string of grayish-white beads in his left hand and a green jade folding fan in his right. He exuded a noble and graceful aura. Such a distinguished young man was like a star in the night sky. Wherever he went, he would be dazzling. Ji Tianqing only needed a glance to recognize him. He was the eldest son of the Murong clan, Murong Lingfeng. The 4 heaven origin experts standing behind Murong Lingfeng wore robes of different colors. Their attire was different from one another. 3 of them were middle-aged men. One was tall and sturdy, while the other was lean and capable. Their eyes were sharp like swords. There was also a white-haired old man. His skin was as dry as tree bark, but it was faintly green. In his hand, he held a cane made of rattan. The 4 of them were around the 8th level of the Divine Prime stage. The strongest of them was the white-haired old man. He was actually at the 9th level of the Divine Prime stage. He. Ji Tianqing, you really can't be underestimated. You could even detect the innate Yi-Wood Divine Fire Array that the 5 of us set up. It's a pity that it's too late for you to notice. You're still trapped by the array. Tonight, you won't be able to escape the fate of being turned into ashes. Murong Lingfeng gently waved his green jade folding fan. There was a mocking sneer on his face. His tone was indescribably proud, as if he had a card up his sleeve. Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly. He asked coldly, Murong Lingfeng, you wanted to get on my good side at first. Now that you can't get on my side, you're finally going to kill me. Murong Lingfeng nodded with a cold smile. That's right. I'm not Duanmu Yulong. I won't act rashly. I won't take the lead to deal with you. However, after the Duanmu clan was destroyed, I knew that I had no hope of getting you under my control. I can only get rid of you. Ji Ku glared at him with a face full of anger. He shouted coldly, Murong Lingfeng, you despicable man. How dare you? This place isn't far from the imperial court. How dare you ambush Brother Tianqing here? Aren't you afraid of being punished by the imperial court and the monarch mansion? Murong Lingfeng shot a glance at Ji Ku and said with a cold smile, compared to this young master's actions, Ji Tianqing actually dared to destroy the Duanmu family. Isn't he even more audacious? Since he has no scruples, why should I care about what the imperial court and the monarch mansion think? Ji Ku was furious, but he couldn't say anything. Ji Tianqing didn't get angry. He glanced at Murong Lingfeng and the four heaven origin experts indifferently. He said with disdain, "Murong Lingfeng, I don't understand. Where did you and these four old trash get the courage to kill me? Didn't your master tell you that even he and his heaven-swallowing beast were severely injured by me and almost lost their lives? Even your master didn't dare to provoke me. Who gave you the guts to ambush me?" Murong Lingfeng's expression changed drastically. He frowned and revealed a bewildered expression. The matter of the buried star sea and the heaven-swallowing beast was the third prince's humiliation. How could he tell Murong Lingfeng? The third prince only reminded Murong Lingfeng not to provoke Ji Tianqing easily. He had to plan carefully before taking action. Murong Lingfeng hadn't fought with Ji Tianqing before. How could he know how strong Ji Tianqing's real combat power was? When he heard Ji Tianqing's words, he was shocked and doubtful. Of course, he didn't believe it. "Humph, Ji Tianqing, don't you dare bluff. How can you be a match for the Lord? Now that the Lord is cultivating in seclusion, I don't need to disturb the Lord. I can deal with you myself. I'm ranked 7th in the monarch mansion. How can you imagine my strength and methods?" These four experts are the top experts that the Murong clan has recruited from hundreds of millions of martial artists. They are also the dragon protectors that the Murong clan has secretly nurtured. Tonight, the four dragon protectors and I have ambushed you personally. This shows that we value you greatly. Chapter 927. Murong Lingfeng's tone was full of confidence and murderous intent. He was at Sky Origin Stage Level 8, the same as Ji Tianqing. He also had the help of the four dragon guardians and the innate Yi with divine fire array. Under such circumstances, why couldn't he kill Ji Tianqing? Even though Ji Tianqing was the #1 genius of the human race, he was still at Sky Origin Stage Level 8. However, he was only at the 8th level of the Sky Origin stage after all. How could he be compared to a soul-refining stage cultivator? The way Murong Lingfeng saw it, Ji Tianqing absolutely did not have the slightest trace of luck. Tonight, he would die without a doubt. Murong Lingfeng's entire body was filled with murderous intent. He was secretly accumulating power, ready to strike at any time. He stared coldly at Ji Tianqing and said in a dignified tone, "Ji Tianqing, I'm giving you one last chance. If you want to live, seal your power and kneel down to surrender." Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly. His cold eyes were filled with contempt and pity. "Murong Lingfeng, if I don't kill you tonight, I'll be letting you down for your stupidity and arrogance." As he spoke, his entire body lit up with golden light and murderous intent. Murong Lingfeng's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He shouted angrily, "Ji Tianqing, you're asking for it. Kill him." Murong Lingfeng ordered and rushed towards Ji Tianqing. He waved the green jade folding fan in his hand and slashed out several rays of dazzling sword light. Each ray of sword light was 30 meters long and contained an unparalleled power. They were as fast as lightning and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing in an instant, covering his body. The four dragon guardians followed closely behind. They all took out their weapons and performed their ultimate skills to attack Ji Tianqing. Flying Star Slash. Sword sealing all directions. Withered with Dragon Elephant Technique. Dragon Thousand Shadow Slash. All of a sudden, the five-colored spiritual light condensed into sword and saber lights, giant palms that blotted out the sun, and light shadows, illuminating the night sky within a radius of dozens of miles. All sorts of ultimate killing moves erupted with terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth, pouring down on Ji Tianqing. At the critical moment, he did not panic and instantly took out his Dharma treasure, the seal of mountains and rivers. He put Qian Yu and Ji Ku into the seal of mountains and rivers space and closed his golden wings to protect himself. Bang 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 bang. The true essence brilliance that blotted out the sky fiercely smashed into the pair of golden wings, causing a series of muffled explosions. The pair of golden wings trembled continuously, flashing with a dazzling golden light. Ji Tianqing was knocked back 1,000 meters, almost falling from the sky to the ground. However, the Kenshin battle robe was able to withstand everyone's joint attack and was unscathed. Violent shockwaves spread out in all directions, creating layers of colorful ripples in the night sky, making the night sky gorgeous. Murong Lingfeng and the 4 dragon guardians were stunned when they saw that Ji Tianqing was unscathed, revealing an expression of disbelief. The power of their joint attack was comparable to a first-level soul-refining realm cultivator's full-power attack. Ji Tianqing was only at the 8th level of Sky Origin Realm. How could he block it? At this moment, Ji Tianqing's body surged with golden light that soared into the sky, bursting with an unparalleled killing intent. It instantly condensed into a huge golden sword that was hundreds of meters long. White Tiger Sacred Sword. Swoosh! The huge golden sword that was hundreds of meters long was surrounded by dazzling golden flames, condensing into the image of a white tiger. It was as fast as lightning, piercing through the night sky and piercing towards Murong Lingfeng. Murong Lingfeng's aura was locked onto by the white tiger sacred sword. He endured the incomparably sharp sword chi suppression and felt a chill all over his body. His heart was filled with shock and fear. Under the cover of the white tiger sacred sword, he felt that there was nowhere to run, let alone dodge. That huge golden sword that could split heaven and earth exploded with a power that could destroy heaven and earth. It had completely surpassed the Sky Origin realm and was comparable to a soul-refining realm cultivator's attack. Murong Lingfeng simply did not dare to believe that Ji Tianqing could actually display such a horrifying sword art with such power. At this critical moment of life and death, he waved his left palm without hesitation and shot out the gray-white pearl necklace, pouring his boundless true essence into it. Buzz! Suddenly, the gray-white pearl necklace blossomed with dazzling white light, condensing into a huge shield that wrapped around his body. Almost at the same time, the white tiger sacred sword fiercely slammed into the white shield, exploding with an earth-shattering sound. Boom! The loud sound shook the heavens as the white shield exploded into pieces that filled the sky. Murong Lingfeng's face was deathly pale as he flew backwards. While he was still in the air, his mouth and nose were overflowing with dark red blood. The white tiger sacred sword's golden light also quickly converged. After the huge sword disappeared, Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. He originally wanted to take advantage of the situation to chase after Murong Lingfeng and completely cripple him, or even kill him on the spot. However, it was a pity that the 4 dragon guardians had already regained their senses. They were eager to protect their master. Seeing that Murong Lingfeng was injured, they disregarded everything and rushed over to attack Ji Tianqing again. Since you are so eager to die, I will fulfill your wish. Ji Tianqing's face was cold as he shouted in a low voice. His body surged with red flames that soared to the sky. His body merged with the flames and turned into a huge flaming sword that was hundreds of meters long. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. The huge sword was surrounded by flames and condensed into a huge shadow of a vermilion bird that was as big as a mountain. It stretched out its sharp claws and attacked a tall and sturdy middle-aged man. Bang! 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 The vermilion bird sacred sword pierced through the night sky and destroyed the saber lights and sword shadows that were used by the crowd. It fiercely bombarded the tall and sturdy man. A series of muffled sounds burst out. The saber lights and sword shadows that filled the sky all collapsed and exploded into countless pieces, splashing in all directions. The tall and sturdy man was only at the 8th level of Sky Origin stage. He didn't have a treasure to protect himself like Murong Lingfeng did. Therefore, he was killed by the vermilion bird sacred sword right away. His protective Zhen Yuan collapsed immediately. His body was smashed into pieces by the vermilion bird sacred sword. Pieces of flesh and blood splashed everywhere. The raging red flames burned the pieces of flesh and blood into black ashes that scattered in the night sky. A powerful cultivator at the 8th level of Sky Origin stage, the Dragon Guardian that the Murong clan spent 20 years to cultivate with countless resources, was killed so easily. Moreover, he was instantly killed by Ji Tianqing. The other 3 Dragon Guardian envoys turned pale after witnessing the scene with their own eyes. Their faces were filled with terror. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't believe it at all. Even Murong Lingfeng, who had retreated far away, was completely dumbfounded. He was dumbstruck. He was also at the 8th level of Sky Origin stage. He ranked 7th in the king's mansion. He had always been proud of it. Although he could defeat the Dragon Guardian, he would have to try his best. It would take him at least 20 moves to defeat the Dragon Guardian. Ji Tianqing was at the same level as him. However, he killed the Dragon Guardian with one sword strike. What kind of terrifying battle prowess was this? At this moment, Murong Lingfeng suddenly regretted it. Chapter 928. Murong Lingfeng and the other 3 emissaries were shocked. It took them a while to come back to their senses. Ji Tianqing seized the chance and rushed to another emissary. It was a skinny middle-aged man who was dressed like a scholar. He was also at the 8th level of Sky Origin stage. Ji Tianqing was glowing with golden light. He was like a golden shooting star piercing through the sky. He was extremely fast. The 3 emissaries realized what was going on. They were all frightened. They waved their weapons angrily, trying their best to perform their killing moves. They released gigantic swords and light blades that blotted out the sun and sky, releasing mountain-sized phantoms of dragons and beasts, attacking Ji Tianqing from all sides with all their might. However, Ji Tianqing just kept rushing forward. He didn't want to dodge at all. Within a blink, he was covered by the overwhelming sword lights and saber lights. The 3 Dragon Guardians were pleasantly surprised as they let out a sigh of relief. However, they didn't expect that Ji Tianqing's body would suddenly become blurry. He performed the sword soul battle technique that he created himself, instantly controlling the battlefield within a radius of 20 miles and observing the attacks of the 3 Dragon Guardians. He saw through the attack patterns of the dozens of sword lights and saber lights. Swoosh! 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 His body kept flashing. He creepily went through the sword lights and saber lights. He wasn't stopped at all. In the next moment, he appeared in front of the middle-aged scholar like a ghost. A cold smile appeared on his handsome face. "You can die now." The middle-aged scholar was shocked. He widely opened his eyes in shock. He was terrified. He couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing had actually passed through the gaps between the attacks that filled the sky and miraculously arrived in front of him. That is, a ghost. Murong Lingfeng and the other 2 dragon protectors were also dumbfounded. They stared at Ji Tianqing with their mouths agape and exclaimed in disbelief. "Oh my God! Is he a man or a ghost? Our attacks don't work on him." At this moment, Ji Tianqing raised his left hand, which was as red as lava, and fiercely slapped out a mountain-sized flaming palm. Burning sky palm. Endless red flames condensed into a sky-burning giant palm, erupting with a violent power that could destroy heaven and earth. In an instant, it struck the middle-aged scholar and drowned his figure. Boom! With a muffled sound, the middle-aged scholar was sent flying backwards with blood spurting out of his 7 orifices. His body immediately exploded into thousands of pieces of broken bones and flesh, and a dark red rain of blood splashed out. However, the pieces of flesh were burned into black ash by the giant flaming palm, and the blood rain was also evaporated into nothingness by the crimson flames. Not only was the middle-aged scholar killed in an instant, even his corpse was not left behind. He had truly been reduced to ashes. The 2nd guardian dragon emissary was instantly killed. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Murong Lingfeng and the two dragon protectors sensed that something was wrong, but they were too late to help. When Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and continued to rush towards the third dragon guardian emissary, everyone was scared out of their wits and panicked. Bastard! How was this possible? How can he be so strong? Murong Lingfeng roared crazily. His face was contorted in anger, and his body was surging with murderous flames. He quickly waved his green jade fan and formed a mysterious seal. He used his array formation skill to control the Khanate E with divine fire array. I don't believe that no matter how strong you are, you can resist the power of the array formation. Under his control, the Khanate E with divine fire array released an extremely strong suppressive force and blasted towards Ji Tianqing. Not only that, but a dazzling fire light lit up high in the sky and poured down on Ji Tianqing like a torrential flood. Ji Tianqing was about to use his unique skill to kill the third dragon guardian emissary. The formless power of the array blasted towards him, causing his body to tremble and fly back 100 feet. His face was ghastly pale, and his chest rose and fell rapidly. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He raised his head to look at the sky and saw flames pouring down from the sky like a flood. At the critical moment, he quickly used the seal of mountains and rivers to block above his head. Swoosh! The seal of mountains and rivers expanded to a radius of 20 feet. It floated above his head like a house, emitting a dazzling golden light. Endless flames poured down, but they were all blocked by the seal of mountains and rivers. The flames spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the night sky within a 10-mile radius was covered by flames and turned into a sea of fire. However, the seal of mountains and rivers protected Ji Tianqing, so he was not hurt at all and was not burned by the flames at all. He rushed towards the third dragon guardian emissary as fast as lightning. Dazzling golden light poured out from his palms and formed a giant golden sword that was 100 feet long. Golden Slash. The giant golden sword released an extremely sharp sword chi that tore the night sky apart and destroyed the oncoming saber radiance and sword shadows. Boom! The giant golden sword hit the dark-skinned dragon guardian emissary, and there was a loud thud. The dragon guardian emissary was split in half by the giant sword. Dark red blood spurted out from his corpse and fell to the ground below. The third dragon guardian emissary could not escape the fate of being killed instantly. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing immediately changed his direction and turned into a shooting light, rushing towards the last dragon guardian emissary. It was a white-haired old man with a cane in his hand. He was the leader of the 4 dragon guardian emissaries. His Taoist name was Master Kumu. He was at Sky Origin Stage Level 9 and was highly valued by Murong Lingfeng. However, he had witnessed 3 dragon guardian emissaries being killed. He was scared out of his wits. Seeing Ji Tianqing rushing towards him, he was so scared that he started to tremble. He turned around and ran towards Murong Lingfeng without hesitation. He knew that he could not stop Ji Tianqing, so he wanted to meet up with Murong Lingfeng and borrow the power of the Khanate E with divine fire array to save his life. However, Ji Tianqing was twice as fast as him. He caught up with him in the blink of an eye. Sword of Judgment! Ji Tianqing shouted with a loud voice. He took out the sword embryo in his body and turned it into a giant golden sword that was over 30 meters long. He rushed towards Master Kumu. The giant golden sword was burning with golden flames. It condensed into a pair of golden wings and shone with golden light. It tore apart the night sky for dozens of miles. Boom! Amidst the deafening noise, the sword of judgment hit Master Kumu and drowned his body. His rattan cane was shattered, his protective Zhenyuan collapsed, and his body exploded with a loud bang, turning into dust by the sword of judgment. Master Kumu was at Sky Origin Stage Level 9. He had been cultivating for over 200 years. He was extremely powerful. He was still wearing a magic armor and desperately performing a secret technique to block the attack of the Sword of Judgment. However, it was all useless. Under the destructive sword of judgment, he could not escape the fate of being killed instantly. He was turned into dust on the spot. It had only been a few dozen breaths since the beginning of the battle. The 4 dragon guardians were all killed instantly. Only Ji Tianqing and Murong Lingfeng were left in the night sky. Murong Lingfeng's face turned gray. His eyes were filled with despair. He shouted in a low voice, "Why? How is this possible?" Chapter 929. Murong Lingfeng had always thought highly of himself and was arrogant in his heart. However, Ji Tianqing's terrifying strength had crushed his confidence and arrogance. He and Ji Tianqing were of the same realm, but the difference in combat power was huge. They were not on the same level at all. He did not want to believe it, but he could not accept this reality. Thick anger and jealousy caused his face to turn ashen. His face was distorted and ferocious, and his eyes turned blood red. However, he did not lose his rationality. He knew that tonight's ambush plan had failed. The 4 dragon guardians were already dead. He alone was definitely not Ji Tianqing's match. If he continued to fight, only death would await him. He had the intention to retreat. Seeing Ji Tianqing coming for him again, he did not hesitate to turn around and escape, flying far away. Ji Tianqing, the Murong family will remember this. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Let's wait and see. I will trample you under my feet sooner or later. How could someone like Murong Lingfeng, who considered himself to be extraordinary and arrogant, endure the humiliation of running away in a sorry state like a rat covering its head? Before he left, he had to leave behind a few harsh words to cover up the humiliation in his heart and find a way out for himself. Of course, he was not just saying these words for fun. As long as he could escape tonight, he would definitely ask his father, Murong Zheng, to kill Ji Tianqing when he returned to the Murong family. However, he had just turned around and escaped 20 miles away when Ji Tianqing caught up with him like a flash of light. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing stepped on the 3-meter golden sword formed by the sword embryo and blocked Murong Lingfeng's path. He looked at Murong Lingfeng coldly and his lips curled into a mocking smile. Murong Lingfeng, since you're here, you still want to leave? You're too naive. If you want revenge, why wait 10 years? Now is the best time. Tonight, you and I will settle our grudges here. Murong Lingfeng was forced to stop. He stood still in the night sky and looked at him with a ferocious expression. He was furious and humiliated to the extreme. Ji Tianqing. Do you really want to kill them all? As the 7th emperor's son, the son of the first wife of the Murong family, how could I not have a trump card? If I am determined to die, I will definitely take you down with me. Of course, Murong Lingfeng had a trump card. Not only did he have a powerful ultimate skill, but he also had a mysterious treasure. Although he admitted that he was not a match for Ji Tianqing, he was willing to pay any price to counterattack and drag Ji Tianqing down with him. Ji Tianqing did not take his threat to heart. He sneered contemptuously, "Perish together. You're thinking too much. You don't have the strength nor the qualifications. An annoying fly like you, I must slap you to death. I will never let you annoy me like a clown again." Flies. Jumping clown. Murong Lingfeng was so angry that smoke came out of his 7 orifices. He almost vomited blood on the spot. He thought of himself as a top genius and a noble figure of the human race, who was many times nobler than Ji Tianqing. He did not expect that in Ji Tianqing's eyes, he would be so petty and lowly, just like a fly. This was definitely the biggest humiliation in his life. The unparalleled anger and humiliation made him irritable and crazy. He finally recognized the reality and no longer held any hope. He quickly took out a dark red 9-story pagoda. He held the 9-story pagoda in his left hand and the green jade folding fan in his right. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a ferocious expression and grinned, "Ji Tianqing, you forced me to do this. You're finished. This is one of the treasures of the Murong family, the mid-grade 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda. Since you want to kill me, we will die together. As he spoke, he frantically channeled his true essence into the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda. Suddenly, the 1-foot-tall 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda became thousands of times bigger with a whoosh. It became a giant pagoda thousands of feet tall. The 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda stood tall in the sky as if it was connected to the 9 heavens. It gathered the fire spirit energy from hundreds of miles away and condensed it into endless 9 heavens glazed fire. The giant pagoda soared with dark golden flames, illuminating the night sky for hundreds of miles, turning the area into a world of fire. In the darkness of the night, the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda was like an indomitable beacon that could be seen from thousands of miles away. Murong Lingfeng stood in front of the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda, his whole body emitting a murderous aura. His clothes fluttered as he shouted with a ferocious expression, "Ji Tianqing. What qualifications do you have to look down on me? Look down on you." Ji Tianqing still had a mocking expression on his face. He sneered contemptuously, "No, I want to kill you." As his voice fell, he activated the third eye on his forehead. Thunder. In the golden eye, the azure spirit pupil released destructive thunder and lightning. It condensed into 100 feet long, as thick as a water tank, and fiercely bombarded Murong Lingfeng. But Murong Lingfeng was already prepared. His figure flashed into the indomitable 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda. Kaboom! The thunder light beam fiercely bombarded the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda, exploding with an earth-shaking roar. At that moment, the thunder light beam collapsed, exploding into a sky full of thunder and lightning arcs, covering dozens of miles of the night sky. The huge pagoda also trembled from the bombardment, splashing golden flames all over the sky, covering hundreds of miles. The mountains and forests in this area were immediately covered by the raging fire, turning into a boundless sea of fire. In just 10 short breaths, hundreds of miles of land were burned into a pitch-black scorched ruin. Murong Lingfeng hid in the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda and laughed wildly. "Ha ha ha. Ji Tianqing, with your insignificant strength, you can't even scratch my itch. I've already told you, you can't kill me at all. Is that so? Then open your dog eyes wide." Ji Tianqing sneered and shouted angrily. He took out his magic treasure, the soul-reaping bell, and poured all his vital essence into it. Suddenly, the palm-sized black bell turned into a huge black ancient bell that was as big as a mountain. It emitted an aura of death that covered the sky and earth. "Kill!" Ji Tianqing shouted and used all his strength to activate the soul-reaping bell, smashing it fiercely at the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda. Bam! In the deafening loud noise, the soul-reaping bell hit the 5th level of the pagoda, right in the middle. The sky-reaching pagoda was on the verge of collapsing, bursting with glazed fire pagoda that covered the sky and the earth. There were also cracking sounds. The 5th level of the pagoda was smashed into a huge pit, and dense cracks appeared all around. Murong Lingfeng's face changed dramatically, revealing a look of horror. "No. How is this possible?" Ji Tianqing ignored him and waved his hands to cast a spell, retrieving the weakened soul-reaping bell. He then used all his strength to activate the seal of mountains and rivers, smashing it fiercely at the 5th level of the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda. Boom! Another earth-shattering noise burst out, and the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda was smashed from the sky, crashing into the scorched earth below with a rumble. The ground was smashed into a deep pit with a radius of dozens of miles, and dust and glazed fire pagoda splashed everywhere. The pagoda cracked again, and more than half of the 5th level collapsed. There was a huge crack, and it was about to break. Murong Lingfeng was instantly filled with fear as he roared, "Ji Tianqing. You bastard! Bastard! How can you have 2 magic treasures? 2 magic treasures! Ha ha ha! Ji Tianqing took back the seal of mountains and rivers with a sneer, and took out the azure-like treasure tree. He burst out with a majestic amount of vital essence and poured it into the azure-like treasure tree, turning it into a giant tree that was thousands of feet tall, and smashed it fiercely at the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda. He actually has a third soul tool. That's the azure-like treasure tree. Murong Lingfeng was in complete despair, and his eyes revealed a thick gray color. Chapter 930. Boom! Crack! The 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda shattered into 2 halves with a loud bang that shook the 9 heavens. Countless dark golden fragments mixed with the flames and splattered in all directions, covering the night sky. The 2 halves of the 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda continued to pour out golden flames. Its power quickly leaked out and became very weak. Soon, the 2 halves of the pagoda shrunk to 3 meters long and fell into the huge pit. More than half of it was covered by the black scorched earth. Murong Lingfeng's figure appeared in the pit. His entire body was black, and his clothes were tattered as he fell into the scorched earth. His body twitched uncontrollably as dark red blood flowed out. The 9 heavens glazed fire pagoda was destroyed, and he was also heavily injured. His disheveled appearance was extremely wretched. Swoosh! A golden light flashed, and Ji Tianqing flew to the bottom of the pit and arrived in front of him. Murong Lingfeng, do you submit? Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and asked in a cold tone. Murong Lingfeng raised his head with difficulty. His face was ferocious as he glared at him. His blood-filled eyes surged with resentment and hatred. No. I refuse to submit. My background is 100 times more noble than yours. My talent is more outstanding than yours. My intelligence far surpasses yours. Why can you obtain everyone's support? Which part of me is not better than you? Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer. He seemed to be talking to himself as he muttered, "Ah." As expected, he's conceited to the bone, and has already become sick. Our grudge ends here. It's time to end it. If there's a next life, remember not to provoke me. When his voice fell, he waved his right sleeve and slashed out a dark golden sword light. Swoosh! The incomparably sharp sword light instantly pierced through Murong Lingfeng's chest and crushed his heart. Ah! Murong Lingfeng's eyes widened on the spot. The life in his eyes quickly dissipated, and blood also flowed out from the corner of his mouth. After that, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and fired out a red flame. It enveloped his corpse and quickly burned it to ashes. A gust of wind blew, sweeping up the black ashes on the ground and scattering them in the pit. Shwa! Ji Tianqing picked up Murong Lingfeng's spatial ring, turned around, and left the deep pit, flying into the dark night sky. He released Qian Yu and Ji Ku from the seal of mountains and rivers and continued to fly south through the night sky. Qian Yu and Ji Ku stayed in the Dharma treasure space, their hearts filled with worry. After seeing him, Ji Ku couldn't wait to ask, "Brother Tianqing, how's the situation? Are you hurt?" Qian Yu looked around and saw the ruins and the huge crater. He asked curiously, "Old Ji, where are those bastards? Did you kill them all? Did you scare that androgynous gigolo away too?" Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, "I've already killed Murong Lingfeng and the 4 dragon protectors." He briefly explained what had happened. After Qian Yu and Ji Ku heard it, they were shocked and couldn't believe it. "Brother Tianqing, Murong Lingfeng is the 7th-ranked imperial prince in the monarch mansion. The 4 dragon protectors are also Heaven Yuan experts who have been famous for more than 100 years. But you killed them all and you're still unharmed. Isn't this too unbelievable? Old Ji, your combat strength has reached such a level. Isn't it comparable to a first-stage soul refinement realm expert?" Ji Tianqing nodded with a smile and didn't say anything else. Ji Ku and Qian Yu were excited for a long time before they gradually calmed down. Ji Tianqing sat on Qian Yu's back and took out Murong Lingfeng's spatial ring to check the spoils of war. The space in the spatial ring was huge and was divided into 4 areas to store all kinds of cultivation resources and treasures. Murong Lingfeng not only had abundant resources and wealth, but he also had obsessive-compulsive disorder or mysophobia. Not only had he divided the resources and treasures into 4 areas, but he had also arranged them in an orderly manner. This was no doubt convenient for Ji Tianqing. It only took him an hour to check all the cultivation resources and treasures. More than 20,000 high-grade spiritual stones, more than 300 heaven yuan weapons and weapons, more than 1,000 elixirs, 3 soul-level elixirs, more than 2,000 sets of materials for refining weapons and elixirs. There are also some fragments of ancient Dharma treasures, unknown antiques, and many other strange things. Such wealth is worth at least a few million spiritual stones. This guy is indeed worthy of being the heir of an ancient family. Even the second-rate wealthy families in Middle State don't have this much wealth, right? With these resources and treasures from Murong Lingfeng, I won't lack cultivation resources for at least a few years. It's enough for me to break through to the soul refinement realm. Ji Tianqing was a little surprised. He sighed with emotion. Being born in an ancient family like the Murong family, even a pig can be nurtured into an expert with endless cultivation resources. Of course, this was only limited to those below the Heaven Yuan realm. To break through to the Heaven Yuan realm, not only did one need a huge amount of cultivation resources, but also high talent and aptitude. As for the soul refinement realm, it was not something that could be nurtured with resources, nor was it something that could be achieved with outstanding talent. It also required extraordinary aptitude and comprehension, guidance from a master teacher expert, as well as great fortuitous encounters. After that, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku hurried on with their journey. There were no more twists and turns along the way. Qian Yu carried them out of Middle State and entered the southern continent. In half a month, they passed through 3 regions and even passed by the Tianshan region. The Tianshan region was guarded by 100,000 elite soldiers. It was safe and sound, and the people lived and worked in peace. Ji Tianqing did not return to the ancient star realm, nor did he go to the royal azure cloud kingdom. On the morning of the 18th day, Qian Yu carried him and Ji Ku to the Shenhui sect in the Yong'an region. The Shenhui sect was located in the middle of the mountains, on the majestic Imprint Peak. The Imprint Peak was a huge mountain that was thousands of feet tall. It was also the mountain with the densest spiritual energy within a few hundred miles. More than 100 years ago, the Shenhui sect was at its peak and was the #1 sect in the Yong'an region. It was said that the Imprint Peak was a top-notch land with spiritual veins. There were spiritual flowers and herbs everywhere, and the spiritual energy could almost condense into colorful clouds. At that time, the Shenhui sect had close to 10,000 disciples, hundreds of deacons, and more than a dozen elders. The number of Heaven Yuan realm experts reached 3. Even the current Sky Pillar sect could not be compared to the Shenhui sect of the past. However, these glorious deeds had become history. After a great calamity, the Shenhui sect suffered heavy losses and was almost destroyed. Today, the Shenhui sect still existed in this world, but it had become an unknown second-rate sect. When Ji Tianqing flew above the Imprint Peak, he saw that only half of the 1,000 feet tall mountain was left. The front of the Imprint Peak still looked decent. The mountain was gentle, and there were ancient gates, houses, palaces, and other buildings. However, the back of the mountain seemed to have been split open by a sword. Only 1,000 feet tall cliff was left, straight and steep. Chapter 931. On the dilapidated Imprint Mountain, the gate was old and mottled. The rows of houses and palaces were mostly dilapidated and gave off a desolate feeling. In the valleys around the mountain, there were a few hundred mu of spirit fields, planted with spirit grains and some herbs. Hundreds of odd-job disciples in coarse linen clothes were working in the fields, harvesting the spirit grains. At the foot of the mountain, there was an ancient square. It was not big, but there were many fallen leaves, and the ground was covered with weeds and moss. The square was empty. Apart from a few dark brown ancient stone sculptures, there were no guards guarding it. Halfway up the mountain, there was a huge stone gate that was 100 meters tall. Below the gate stood 8 white-robed mystic enlightening realm disciples, guarding listlessly. Halfway up the mountain, there were a few courtyards where the disciples lived. There were hundreds of houses, but there was no activity. It was very quiet. Only a few palaces at the peak of the mountain still gave off a majestic aura. However, those palaces had been in disrepair for a long time and were somewhat old. The glazed tiles on the roofs did not shine with golden light as they were covered by moss and weeds. The square at the peak of the mountain also seemed cold and cheerless. There were a few Tongxian realm young disciples dressed in white robes gathered under a large banyan tree, discussing something in low voices. Ji Tianqing observed for a moment, then descended from the sky with Ji Ku. He did not go to the gate to pay a visit. Instead, he passed through the protective mountain array and landed on the square at the peak of the mountain. Swoosh! The white-robed disciples did not notice him and Ji Ku landing on the square. They were still discussing something trivial. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned and brought Ji Ku under the large banyan tree. When he and Ji Ku reached the tree, the disciples heard the footsteps and stopped their discussion. They turned to look at the two of them. Someone's coming. Hey, who are you two? These two look unfamiliar. Are they guests here to pay a visit to our sect? TSK, stop dreaming. Our sect hasn't had a guest for 3 to 5 years. Who would come to pay a visit to our sect? The 4 disciples looked at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku suspiciously as they whispered to each other. Upon seeing their reaction and hearing their words, Ji Ku frowned and sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing, Brother Tianqing, the Shenhui sect used to be a top sect. How did it end up like this? Look at their inner sect disciples. They are far inferior to our sky-bearing sect's disciples. They don't have the demeanor of disciples from famous sections. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a voice transmission, it's just a rundown second-rate sect. What kind of bearing can its disciples have? Don't worry about these small details. We'll leave once we're done. After saying that, he looked at the 4 young disciples and asked in a dignified tone, where is your sect leader? Go and report the news to him. Tell him that the region lord of Tianchen is here to see him. With his status, there was no need for him to be courteous with the Shenhui sect. He didn't want to waste any more time, so he went straight to the point and told the sect master of the Gods Association to come and greet him. However, the 4 young disciples had blank looks on their faces as they stood rooted to the ground. Sect leader? Are you talking about our sect leader? That's ridiculous. Who do you think you are? Do you think you can see our sect leader just because you want to? Have you sent him a visiting card? Ha ha ha. This guy said he's the region lord of Tianchen. That's ridiculous. Does the Tianchen region have a region lord? Even if there was really a heavenly stellar region lord, how noble was his status? Why would he come to a small sect like our Shenhui sect? Tisk TSK, this guy is young but he's good at acting. He's so good at acting. I almost believed him just now. The 4 young disciples looked at Ji Tianqing with smiles on their faces. They pointed and commented, as if they were waiting to see a joke. Ji Tianqing was so angry that he almost laughed. He frowned and said to himself, I overestimated the Shenhui sect. I didn't expect their disciples to be so ignorant. Ji Ku didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He nodded and said, that's right. These frogs at the bottom of the well are so pitiful. When the 4 young disciples heard their conversation, they became even more jubilant. They laughed so hard that they were swaying back and forth. Ha 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 ha. Look, these 2 are singing the same tune. It's like they're performing in an opera. Oh, the Tianchen region lord, who is as noble as a star, has come to a quagmire like our Shenhui sect. We're so flattered. Ha ha ha. We've been bored recently. We didn't expect these two idiots to come and put on a show. It's a good way to relieve our boredom. The oldest white-robed disciple waved his hand and pretended to be serious. He coughed and said seriously, ahem. Junior brothers, let's stop laughing and have fun. Let's hurry up and get the guards on duty to drive these two dubious guys away. Otherwise, if the elders find out about this, they might punish us. The other three disciples nodded in agreement. Yes, drive these two away. Wait here, I'll go get the guards on duty. One of the disciples held back his laughter and glanced at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku with a mocking look. He was about to go get the guards on duty to drive them away. Ji Tianqing frowned. He didn't want to waste any more time with them. He lifted his right foot and stomped on the ground. Bang! A loud, muffled sound exploded. It reverberated through the mountains for dozens of miles. The entire imprint mountain shook 3 times. The houses and palaces on the mountain shook non-stop. Countless tiles fell from the roof. The 100-meter square under everyone's feet instantly collapsed. Dense cracks appeared on the ground and spread out in all directions like a spider web. The 4 white-robed disciples were knocked to the ground on the spot. Their bodies went limp and their eyes widened in horror. The 4 of them fell into the ruins and stared at Ji Tianqing as if they had seen a ghost. After a long period of silence, they finally regained their senses. They immediately scrambled toward the palace not far away. The 4 of them were scared out of their wits. As they fled in panic, they screamed in horror. Ah! Murder! Sect Master! Something bad has happened. There's an intruder. Someone come quickly. In the blink of an eye, the 4 white-robed disciples disappeared without a trace. Only their hoarse screams echoed on the mountain peak. Seeing this comical scene, Ji Ku covered her mouth and giggled. He he he. That's too funny. Big brother Tianqing, you're too evil. You scared them out of their wits. Ji Tianqing spread his hands and revealed a helpless expression. To deal with these ignorant and infuriating people, I can only use such a simple and crude method. Ji Ku nodded repeatedly and said with a chuckle, fortunately, they met you, so they were only punished and were able to keep their lives. If it were any other emperor's son, they might have already killed them. Ji Tianqing shook his head. They're just ignorant. They don't deserve to die. A small punishment is enough. Chapter 932. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku stood in the square for a while before a dozen people rushed over at lightning speed. The dozen or so experts were all in the Origin Core realm. They rushed out of the various palaces and arrived at the square as fast as lightning. Perhaps they did not hear the shouts of the 4 young disciples. However, Ji Tianqing's stomp had directly shattered the square at the peak of the mountain and caused the entire imprint mountain to shake incessantly. It had alarmed everyone within a radius of dozens of kilometers. The dozen or so experts were only the first to react. After sensing the commotion, they rushed to the square with fear and anger to check the situation. These people were either dressed in purple robes or black robes. They were the elders and deacons of the Shenhui sect. When the crowd arrived at the ruined square, they immediately surrounded Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku. They were full of hostility, but their eyes were filled with deep fear and alarm. They all stood about 10 feet away from Ji Tianqing, not daring to approach. Who is this guy? Is he here to seek revenge? Was he the one who caused that loud explosion? Heavens, he actually shattered the inner square and caused the entire mountain to shake incessantly. This person's strength is incomparably terrifying. Everyone, be careful. Quick, go and ask the sect master to come over. The elders and deacons whispered to each other, but no one dared to approach Ji Tianqing, much less attack him. Just as everyone was at a loss and filled with anxiety, someone in the crowd shouted. "Great, the sect master is finally here." Everyone turned their heads in unison and saw a middle-aged man in a golden robe flying over with a serious expression. The skinny middle-aged man in a golden robe and a feathered crown was the Shenhui sect master. Not far behind him were the 4 young disciples whose faces had turned green with fright. The Shenhui sect master stepped onto the square, passed by the elders and deacons, and stood about 10 steps away from Ji Tianqing. The 4 young disciples were so scared that they didn't dare to approach the square. They hid under a big tree at the edge of the square and stuck their heads out to look in this direction. Ji Tianqing looked at the golden-robed man and asked in a dignified tone, "Are you the sect master of the Shenhui sect?" The golden-robed man didn't dare to be careless. He stared at Ji Tianqing and nodded slightly. "That's right. I'm Lin Burang, the current chief of the Shenhui sect. May I ask who you are? Why did you barge into our sect and cause trouble for no reason? Our sect has always been well-behaved and has never offended any other sect." Apparently, the Shenhui sect had lost a lot of talents in the past few decades, and their influence had declined. They could only swallow their pride and struggle to survive. Lin Burang understood the essence of the word tolerance. When he saw Ji Tianqing, he didn't dare to reprimand him, nor did he dare to get angry. Instead, he put on a humble attitude of "let's talk things over nicely." Ji Tianqing glanced at him, then looked around and couldn't help but frown. Among the people present, Lin Burang was the strongest. He had reached Sky Origin Stage LV2. He was also the only Sky Origin Stage expert here. In addition, the other elders and deacons were all in the Origin Core stage. They were not worth mentioning at all. Ji Tianqing saw Lin Burang's humble attitude, so he didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. "I'm Ji Tianqing, the Tianshan region lord. I've come to the Shenhui sect today to investigate a past incident." Lin Burang and the other elders and deacons were stunned when they heard his words. Their faces were filled with disbelief. "Tianshan region lord? Ji Tianqing? It's the Tianshan region lord. Why would such a noble powerhouse come to our Shenhui sect? Ji Tianqing. Why does this name sound so familiar? I remember it now. He's the new Tianshan region lord, the world-famous genius of the Crown Prince." "What? He's the #1 genius of our clan, Ji Tianqing, the Crown Prince?" The elders whispered to each other. When they realized Ji Tianqing's identity, they were so shocked that their faces changed dramatically. Their eyes were filled with deep admiration. In the past year, Ji Tianqing had become famous and awe-inspiring. His various legends and deeds had already spread throughout the Central Continent and the Four Corners continent. Especially among the humans in the Southern Continent, his reputation was extremely high. He could be said to be a household name. Although the Shenhui sect had declined, it was still a second-rate sect. Moreover, the Yangon region was right next to the Tianshan region. How could they not know Ji Tianqing's name? After Lin Burang came to his senses, he stared at the elders and deacons sternly, signaling them to be quiet and calm. Then, he bowed to Ji Tianqing in fear and trepidation and said respectfully, "I'm Lin Burang. Greetings, Tianshan region lord. I didn't know Tianshan region lord was coming to our sect. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you." The elders and deacons quickly came back to their senses and followed Lin Burang's example, bowing respectfully to the heavenly deity. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a calm expression, "Everyone, please be at ease." Only then did the crowd slowly straighten up, their expressions and eyes becoming more respectful. Lin Burang quickly bowed and stretched out his hand, making a "please" gesture. He smiled and said, "Lord Ji, you've come from afar. Your presence brings light to our humble abode. I hope Lord Ji doesn't mind our humble abode. Please follow me to the main hall and have a seat. We can talk slowly." "That's fine," Ji Tianqing nodded and followed Lin Burang into the main hall. All the elders and deacons lowered their heads and followed behind him respectfully. When they passed by the edge of the square, the 4 young disciples under the big tree were scared witless. They knelt on the ground with ashen faces and kowtowed repeatedly to beg for mercy. Tianshan Region Lord, please forgive us. Just now, we were blind and offended Your Excellency. Please have mercy on us, Your Excellency. We deserve to die. We are guilty. I hope Tianshan Region Lord will give us a lighter punishment on account of our young age and ignorance. Ji Tianqing walked past the big tree, surrounded by the crowd. He didn't even bother to look at the 4 people. Lin Burang secretly observed their expressions. In order to please Ji Tianqing, he ordered in a dignified tone, "Disciplinary elder, take these 4 disciples who offended our esteemed guests away and punish them severely." Ji Ku was kind-hearted. Seeing that the 4 people were scared half to death, he waved his hand and said, "Sect leader Lin, they didn't do it on purpose. There's no need to punish them too harshly." Lin Burang hurriedly bowed and flattered, "Thank you, Mississippi. You have the heart of a bodhisattva. You are not calculative with these juniors." After that, he looked at the 4 disciples with a dignified expression and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and thank this miss for her magnanimity." The 4 disciples came back to their senses and kowtowed as if they had been pardoned, expressing their gratitude to Ji Ku. It was only now that they realized that the young man who looked similar to them and was wearing a white robe was the legendary Prince Ji Tianqing. If Ji Tianqing was the bright star in the 9 heavens, they were toads in the mud. Chapter 933. In the Shenhui sect's guest hall. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku sat at the head of the table, with spirit fruits, spirit tea, and pastries placed on the table in front of them. Although these things were common to them and they didn't even want to taste them, these were the spirit fruits and spirit fruits. However, these spiritual fruits and spiritual teas were the most precious treasures in the Shenhui sect. Even Lin Burang was reluctant to taste them. Lin Burang sat at the head of the table on the left side of the hall and accompanied them submissively. The elders and deacons didn't even have the right to sit. They all stood respectfully in the hall, not daring to make a single noise. Ji Tianqing saw that everyone was trembling with fear and said calmly, "Everyone, there's no need to be so nervous. I came to the Shenhui sect this time to find out about a matter from 100 years ago. After I've finished my investigation, I will leave and won't stay in your sect for long." A matter from 100 years ago? Lin Burang frowned slightly. He vaguely guessed something and asked cautiously, "Lord Ji, may I ask what matter you want to investigate?" Ji Tianqing didn't beat around the bush and said directly, 100 years ago, when your sect was still the #1 sect in the Yangon region, did you build a spirit beast garden and raise a flood dragon as one of the spirit beasts?" "A flood dragon?" Lin Burang frowned and his expression changed. The expressions of the elders and deacons also changed. Some of them were on alert, while others were confused. Lin Burang hesitated for a moment, then waved his hand at the elders and deacons and ordered, "All of you, leave us. I have something important to discuss with Lord Ji." Everyone understood that what Lin Burang was about to say would involve the secrets of the Shenhui sect and shouldn't be heard. Thus, all the elders and deacons bowed and left the great hall. In the blink of an eye, only Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, and Lin Burang were left in the hall. Lin Burang then said to Ji Tianqing with a serious expression, "Lord Ji, to be honest, I only became the sect master 40 years ago. 100 years ago, I wasn't even born yet, so I don't know much about the sect." Ji Tianqing stared at him sharply and asked in a deep voice, "Even if you were not born, you are the current sect leader. Do you really know nothing about what happened 100 years ago?" As he spoke, he released an invisible pressure that enveloped Lin Burang. Lin Burang's back was bent from the pressure. His face was pale, and beads of sweat dripped from his forehead. He bowed in fear and trepidation, and said in a low voice, "Lord Ji, please show mercy. I only know a little about what happened back then, so I'm not very clear about it. Furthermore, that flood dragon was snatched away by someone back then. It has nothing to do with our sect anymore. Snatch? It was clearly your sect's elder Ji who took it away. How can you say that it was stolen? Ji Tianqing frowned and asked in a dignified voice. Lin Burang's expression changed drastically as he looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Lord Ji, how do you know all this? Ji Tianqing sneered and didn't bother to explain. Ji Ke glanced at Lin Burang and said in a playful tone, Sect leader Lin, why would young Master Ji come to the Shenhui sect in person if he didn't have some important information? Let me give you a piece of advice. You'd better not play any tricks. If you tell the truth, you'll still be safe. If you dare to play tricks with young Master Ji, the Shenhui sect might be destroyed by your hands. Lin Burang's body trembled. His expression turned ugly, and his eyes filled with fear. He didn't doubt that with Ji Tianqing's strength and methods, destroying the tiny Shenhui sect would be as easy as flipping over his hand. After a moment of silence, Lin Burang finally calmed down and confessed honestly, Lord Ji, you're right. That flood dragon was indeed handed over by the sect leader to an elder surnamed Ji when our sect was facing a great calamity. He ordered him to take it away from the sect. That elder's surname was Ji and his name was Yuan Long. He was the youngest and most promising elder in our sect and was highly regarded by the sect leader. However, I don't know where that elder Ji went after taking the flood dragon away from our sect, or where he is now. If you want to investigate that flood dragon, you might as well go to the forbidden area behind our sect's mountain. Perhaps you'll find some clues there. That forbidden area was where the spirit beast garden used to be. It has been sealed by a great formation since 100 years ago. Even now, no one has been able to enter it. Lin Burang's answer was very honest. It was basically the same as what Ji Tianqing knew. He nodded and said, all right, I'll go to the forbidden area to check it out later. Also, I have another question. Do you know what happened to the Shenhui sect back then? Why did the former number 1 sect suffer such great losses and almost fall apart? Lin Burang hesitated for a moment before replying in a heavy tone, Lord Ji, I believe you also understand that there are as many martial sects as there are hairs on an ox in this world. Every great power rises and falls, and no one can last forever, just like those kingdoms in the mortal world. Our sect used to be the number 1 sect in the Yangon region, prosperous and famous. Naturally, we attracted the hostility of many sects and forces. Our sect's greatest enemy was the Green Mountain sect. The Green Mountain sect coveted our sect's most precious treasure, the heavenly prayer mirror, and the flood dragon raised by our sect. As a result, the Green Mountain sect plotted for many years. They gathered 2 other large sects and 1 force to besiege our sect, forcing us to hand over the heavenly prayer mirror and the flood dragon. As the number 1 sect, our sect couldn't be threatened by the Green Mountain sect. As a result, the 4 forces joined forces to besiege our sect. The sect master, elders, caretakers, and disciples of our sect fought a bloody battle, resisting the siege of the 4 forces with their lives. The 2 sides fought for a day and a night. More than half of the swordsmen of our sect were killed in the battle, and the disciples suffered great casualties. At the critical moment, the sect master handed the flood dragon to Elder Ji Yuan Long, ordering him to flee the Shenhui sect with the flood dragon. In the end, the sect master sacrificed his own life to activate the heavenly prayer mirror and self-destruct, perishing together with the swordsmen of the 4 forces. After that calamity, the heavenly prayer mirror was gone, and the flood dragon was nowhere to be found. The swordsmen of our sect either died or fled. Our sect's power declined sharply, almost falling apart. The 4 forces didn't get any benefits, and more than half of their swordsmen were killed or injured. After that calamity, they couldn't recover, and soon declined and disappeared. Lin Burang recounted the events of the past. After hearing this, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but feel sentimental. He couldn't help but think of the grudge between the Tianjian sect and the Sky Holding sect. It was so similar to this. Lin Burang sighed with a complex tone, full of sentiments. Nobody expected that after our sect and the Green Mountain sect fought for so many years, the Heaven and Earth sect would benefit from the conflict, taking advantage of the situation and becoming the #1 sect. Our sect, on the other hand, can only guard the inheritance left by our ancestors, living a muddle-headed life, struggling at death's door. Fate is full of ups and downs, and the affairs of the world are unpredictable. Chapter 934. After discussing business, Lin Burang arranged accommodations for Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku. The two of them had been on the road for more than half a month. They were covered in dust and were a little tired. The investigation of the dragon crystal was not something that could be completed in a day or two. The two of them could only stay in the Shenhui sect for now. Lin Burang treated them as honored guests, so he arranged for them to stay in the best courtyard in the Shenhui sect. After settling them in, Lin Burang tactfully retreated. Ji Ku rested in the courtyard while Ji Tianqing went to Lin Burang's study to read all kinds of books. He was not interested in the various cultivation methods and secret manuals in the study. He picked some ancient books from more than 100 years ago to deepen his understanding of the Shenhui sect. Although there were more than 100 ancient books, he could read them very quickly with his spiritual sense. Half a day passed before he knew it. It was already late at night when he finished reading the hundreds of ancient books. The contents recorded in those ancient books gave him a more thorough understanding of the Shenhui sect from more than 100 years ago. He also knew the whole story of that unforeseen event. He left the study with satisfaction and returned to the courtyard to rest. The night sky was filled with stars and the silver moon was bright. Ji Tianqing meditated in his room for a while. He felt a little melancholy and could not calm down. He got up and walked to the window. Looking at the starry sky outside, he sank into deep thought and memories. Hundreds of millions of stars dotted the night sky. They shone brightly and flickered. Ji Tianqing looked at the stars in the night sky. Sorrow and longing welled up in his heart. He murmured to himself, "Legend has it that everyone is a star in the sky. I wonder which star is me and which star is Yao Yao. Yao Yao, where are you now? How are you doing? Are you like me, looking at the stars in the sky and thinking of me?" The bright moon and the brilliance of the stars evoked the longing in his heart. He felt that the night was getting colder and colder. Even the air he breathed was cold and lonely. At the same time, in the snowy plains in the deepest part of the northern desert, a huge dark red river of blood surrounded a huge ice mountain that was 100 miles wide. At the peak of the ice mountain stood an ice crystal palace that had not melted since ancient times. It was the holy land of the demon race, the Heavenly Devil Palace. In the depths of the Heavenly Devil Palace, there was a spacious and solemn secret room. This secret chamber had not been opened for hundreds of years, but tonight, it was opened. The gemstone lamps on the walls lit up with a dark red light, illuminating the entire secret room with a hazy red light. In the middle of the secret room, there was a dark red blood pool with a radius of 10 meters. The pool was filled with an endless amount of dark red blood that was slowly flowing. This blood pool was connected to the sacred river outside the Heavenly Devil Palace and would never dry up. In the middle of the blood pool, there was a 3-meter-tall black altar. The altar was made of hundreds of top materials, and its surface was engraved with ancient demon characters and symbols, as well as 19 ferocious demon god patterns. At the top of the altar was a platform more than 3 meters long and 2 meters wide. A beautiful woman wearing a fiery red wedding dress and a phoenix coronet was lying quietly on the platform. She was Yun Yao, who had been captured by the Demon King. She had been unconscious the entire time, lying on the top of the altar with her eyes closed and her face pale. The dark red blood pool slowly flowed, releasing countless strands of dark red blood energy that gathered at the altar. The altar had been opened and was shining with a dark red light, and it was rippling with a violent, invisible energy. Thousands of strands of black demonic chi mixed with countless strands of dark red blood energy were wrapping around the unconscious Yun Yao and invading her body. Under the corrosion of the blood pool and the altar, her true essence was gradually dissipating, and her body was slowly changing. 3 tall and burly demons stood at the edge of the blood pool. The one in the middle was 10 meters tall, had 2 heads, white hair, and azure wings, and exuded a domineering aura. He was the ancient demon king. The male demon to the left of the demon king was covered in black armor, and only his eyes were exposed. He exuded a cold aura of death. He was the demon commander, Dark Knight demon commander. On the right of the demon king was a burly man with 4 wings, 6 arms, and a single eye. He was the Sky Barbarian demon commander. The demon king was holding a mysterious, pitch-black scepter in his hand. It was the demon god scepter. There was a strand of black chi at the top of the scepter. It was the dream demon. The demon king and the 2 demon commanders looked at Yun Yao on the top of the altar quietly and watched her being corroded by the blood energy and demonic chi. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. The Sky Barbarian demon commander stared at Yun Yao for a while and couldn't help but pout. He muttered in confusion, "I've heard that Yun Yao from the Cloud Spirit Palace is a famous genius in the middle ground. She's also one of the most beautiful women in the human race. I wonder what kind of taste the insects in the human race have. How can a woman like her be considered a beautiful woman? She's short and skinny, and her skin is frighteningly white. She's not tall and strong at all. Where does her beauty come from? In Benshuai's eyes, she's so ugly that it's frightening." The dream demon nodded in agreement. "That's right. The lowly human race is so pitiful. They don't know what a real beauty is. Look at the women in the demon race. They're all tall and strong with strong muscles. They're filled with power. Their dark purple skin is covered with hair. That's what a beauty is." The Dark Knight demon commander remained cold and silent the entire time. However, from his eyes, it was clear that he agreed with the dream demon and the Sky Barbarian demon commander. The ancient demon emperor waved his hand and said in a dignified voice, "I took a huge risk and went to the middle ground personally to capture Yun Yao and bring her back to the Sky Demon Palace. So what if she's ugly? I want the Neptunian divine pearl. Ha! Yun Yao is regarded as a pure fairy by the insects in the human race, but I'm going to use the 1,000 demon blood pool and the samurai soul altar to change her and turn her into a subject of the demon race. After 49 days, she'll lose her humanity and become the blood god of the primordial evil demons. By then, she'll serve me wholeheartedly and use the power of the Neptunian divine pearl to remove the curse and shackles of my people. I'm going to make her the saintess of my people so that she can change the fate of my people, help me revive the demon race, and realize my revenge." The Sky Barbarian demon commander nodded and smirked when he heard the ancient demon emperor's words. He. His Majesty the Devil Emperor is wise and mighty, unparalleled in this world. The fairy of the human race is going to become the saintess of my people. She's willing to serve us. If the Cloud Spirit Palace and the Imperial Court of the human race hear about this, they'll be so angry that they'll vomit blood, right? The dream demon was also excited. Yun Yao has killed so many of our warriors, but she's going to serve us in the future and fight against the human race. Chapter 935. It was late at night. Ji Tianqing stood by the window for 2 hours before he gradually calmed down. It wasn't until dawn that he returned to his bed to meditate. 6 hours later, it was dawn. After daybreak, he ended his cultivation. He took out the black dragon sword and placed it on the table, asking, "Little black dragon, do you remember anything about this place?" The black dragon sword transformed into a little black dragon with a whoosh, revealing its 2-meter-long body and dancing in the air. The little black dragon circled around the room and even flew into the sky to observe for a while before returning to Ji Tianqing. Old G, I vaguely remember living here for a few years when I was young. However, this place is a bit different from what I remember, so I can't be sure. Ji Tianqing nodded and left the courtyard with the little black dragon. Ji Ke stayed in the courtyard to rest while he brought the little black dragon to the forbidden area behind the God Seal Peak. This forbidden area was 15 kilometers away from the God Seal Peak. 100 years ago, it was the divine Hui Sect Spirit Beast Garden. However, after that great battle, the Spirit Beast Garden had long been reduced to ruins. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the ruins, he saw that the area was filled with jagged rocks and earth, as well as thorny undergrowth and weeds. A flock of colorful birds were chirping on the branches of the forest. A few low-level demon beasts were passing through the forest, their pace languid and leisurely. It was obvious that this area was the divine Hui Sect's forbidden area. Sect disciples were forbidden from approaching it. Even Sect Master Lin Burang and the elders and deacons rarely came here, and no one had ever entered the forbidden area before. Ji Tianqing used his spiritual sense to investigate the area and found some clues. He also guessed the reason. The ruins within 15 kilometers, as well as the underground beneath the ruins, were all sealed by a Grand Heaven Origin formation. This was a top-notch Grand Heaven Origin formation. It was made up of 4 overlapping Grand Heaven Origin formations and used 3 profound formation techniques. Only a top-notch array Dao Grandmaster would be able to break this sealing array. In the Shenhui sect, only Lin Burang had reached the Sky Origin stage, and he was only at the 2nd level of the Sky Origin stage. With his strength and knowledge, it was obviously impossible for him to break this top-notch Grand Tianyuan array. Ji Tianqing didn't waste any more time. He hurriedly opened his pure heart Dharma eye and executed his array Dao Lost Art. He began to crack this sealing grand array. Although the structure of the formation and the method of setting it up were very profound and complicated. However, this was not a problem for him at all. When he had not yet reached the Sky Origin stage, he had already broken the seal of the Dragon Mountain tomb. The grand formation left behind by Emperor Yi was many times more profound than this sealing grand formation. In just an hour's time, Ji Tianqing had successfully cracked the seal formation. The forest in front of him, which was originally empty, suddenly lit up with a dazzling white light, condensing into a door of light. Shwa! Ji Tianqing stepped through the door of light without any hesitation. He brought the little black dragon through the sealing array and into the forbidden grounds. The forbidden grounds were hidden in the forest. It was very well hidden and could not be seen from the outside. The ground was overgrown with weeds and littered with gravel and dirt. Broken and decayed weapon fragments could be faintly seen in some cracks. In the depths of the forest, some broken walls and half-broken statues could be vaguely seen. The forbidden grounds were deathly silent. Apart from Ji Tianqing and the little black dragon, there was nothing else alive. Ji Tianqing slowly walked deeper into the forbidden grounds. His sharp eyes scanned his surroundings, and he released his spiritual sense to investigate a radius of 1,000 meters. The little black dragon followed closely behind him, its eyes darting about as it curiously observed its surroundings. Little black dragon, this was the Spirit Beast Garden from back then. Do you still remember it? The little black dragon nodded and said in a muffled voice, I vaguely remember a little, but this place has been reduced to ruins. I can't recognize it anymore. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else. He led the little black dragon deeper into the forbidden grounds. As he went deeper into the forbidden grounds, he saw more and more traces and remains. Not only were there many statues and broken walls, there were also the remains of human martial artists, the fragments of various weapons, and the corpses of spirit beasts. From these traces, one could see just how desperate the battle that had taken place here back then had been. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing had investigated an area with a radius of 30 li. He saw countless traces of battle, but he was unable to find any useful clues. Thus, he went underground and continued to investigate the ruins. The underground was gloomy and devoid of light. Craters and broken tunnels were everywhere, and there were many traces of battle. The corpses of spirit beasts and martial artists were piled up here. Ji Tianqing spent 6 hours investigating the underground and found a few scattered clues. By the time he left the forbidden grounds with the little black dragon and returned to his residence, it was already afternoon. Ji Ku had already finished his cultivation and was waiting in the reception room for his return. Upon seeing him enter the reception room, Ji Ku hurriedly came up and asked in concern, "Big brother Tianqing, what's the situation like? Have you found any clues and information?" Ji Tianqing nodded calmly and said, "I've found some clues. Combined with the information I learned from the books I read yesterday, I have an answer." When the great grandmaster of the Ji family left with the little black dragon, the dragon crystal was still in the little black dragon's body. However, when the great grandmaster of the Ji family fled from the Yangon region and headed to the Tianshan region, he was pursued by a large number of highly achieved swordsmen. The little black dragon has some vague recollections, saying that his dragon crystal was dug out during a battle. At the time, he was severely wounded and passed out. Ji Ku furrowed his brows and asked in confusion, "Are the people who killed the great grandmaster of the Ji family the highly achieved swordsmen of the Green Mountain sect and the other 3 major forces?" After some thought, Ji Tianqing analyzed solemnly, "According to the information I've learned, I guess it's not the people of the 4 major forces. It should be someone else. If it's the people of the 4 major forces, it'll be troublesome. The 4 major forces have been destroyed and disbanded one after another, so it's impossible to investigate further. If it's not them, who could have done it?" Ji Ku's brows furrowed tightly, feeling even more puzzled. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a smile as he said calmly, "If I'm not wrong, it should be the Qiankuan sect who did it. After all, the Heaven and Earth sect is the biggest winner in this battle. It's very likely that they'll sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight while the 2 sides fight, and then launch an attack afterwards." "That makes sense." Ji Ku nodded in agreement and asked, "Big brother Tianqing, what are you going to do then? Are you going to the Heaven and Earth sect to continue the investigation?" Ji Tianqing thought for a while and said with a smile, "This is only our guess. We don't have any clues or evidence, so how can we continue the investigation? We'll pay a visit to the Heaven and Earth sect and ask the sect master of the Heaven and Earth sect about this matter. I remember that the heavenly concubine and Suwan is the principal disciple of the Heaven and Earth sect." Chapter 936. Ji Tianqing made up his mind and left the Shenhui sect with Ji Ku. When the 2 of them left, Lin Burang and the other elders and deacons all respectfully sent them off. When the 2 of them flew into the sky and disappeared into the distance at lightning speed, Lin Burang and the others heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. It was not only a great honor for them to have someone as honorable as the Tianshan territorial lord stay in the Shenhui sect, but it was also a great pressure. In the past 2 days, Lin Burang and the other elders and deacons were on tenterhooks. They were afraid that something would go wrong. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku had finally left, and the heavy burden in their hearts had finally been lifted. The Qiankuan sect was the most powerful sect in the Yong'an region. It was located in the Taiwu mountain range, which had a top-notch spiritual vein. In the past few decades, the Qiankuan sect's power had grown rapidly. It was now at its peak. The entire Taiwu mountain range was the Qiankuan sect's territory. There were dozens of villages and a few cities with at least 2 million citizens. They all worked for the Qiankuan sect. The Qiankuan sect had more than 30,000 disciples and servants. It was said that they had 8,000 outer sect disciples, more than 1,000 inner sect disciples, and more than 100 elders and deacons. Furthermore, the Qiankuan sect had 3 ethereal cultivation stage cultivators guarding it. The Qiankuan sect dominated the Yong'an region. They were powerful enough to intimidate dozens of kingdoms and hundreds of forces. After the emperor's concubine selection, the Qianquan sect status skyrocketed because of the relationship between the emperor and the imperial court. In the past, no matter how powerful the Qianquan sect was, they still had to rely on the Yong and region lord. Ever since the first disciple of the Qianquan sect, Ansuan, was chosen as the heavenly concubine, the Qianquan sect status skyrocketed. They were now on par with the Yong and region lord. It was said that even the Yong and region lord had to be respectful to the Qianquan sect. After all, the Qianquan sect had the emperor and the imperial court as their backing. Who would dare to offend them? The heaven and earth sect's reputation was no longer limited to the Yong and region. It had even spread to the surrounding regions. It had become the most favored and most prosperous sect in the 9 southern regions. This information was obtained by Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku after they arrived at the Tai Wu mountain range. When Ji Ku heard this news, he was worried. He transmitted a message to Ji Tianqing, "Brother Tianqing, Qianquan sect is like the sun in the sky now. They are extremely arrogant and despotic. If we go and look for Qianquan sect head like this, what if they don't buy it and don't give us any face?" Ji Tianqing wasn't worried at all. He smiled faintly and said, "If we can't talk nicely, then we can only talk with our fists. Strength is the absolute truth. A mere Qianquan sect could only reign supreme in the southern region. Could it be that they would dare to bully us? If Qianquan sect doesn't know what's good for them, I don't mind teaching them a lesson to wake them up." Ji Ku looked at him. His clear eyes shone brightly as he smiled and said, "Brother Tianqing, you are becoming more and more domineering." Ji Tianqing smiled and waved his hand. He explained, "I'm not domineering. I'm just in a hurry." The two of them chatted as they flew in the sky. Before long, the two of them arrived at the center of the Tai Wu mountain range. They landed at the foot of the Tai Wu mountain. This was a towering mountain that was 1,000 feet tall. It was also the core of the spiritual vein. The heaven and earth spiritual energy was extremely dense. At the foot of the mountain was a huge square. It was clean and tidy and looked majestic. Hundreds of young martial artists were queuing up in the square. They were filled with anticipation as they waited for their strength to be tested. These people were all young talents from various countries. They all dreamed of becoming a disciple of Qianquan sect. From then on, they would have a meteoric rise. At the very least, if they could become a servant in Qianquan sect, they would have a chance to be promoted to an outer sect disciple and change their fate. A few deacons in black robes were sitting behind a long table with their heads held high, testing the young warriors' strengths, realms, and talents one by one. These deacons had arrogant looks on their faces. They didn't even look at the young martial artists. If they didn't like the young martial artists, they would hurl insults at them. A few young martial artists who were filled with anticipation but failed the test were scolded by the deacons. They were too agitated and delayed the cue. Not only that, a few Qianquan sect disciples even grabbed onto them and tossed them out of the crowd. Those young martial artists who were humiliated could only bear with it and leave pathetically. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku stood in the sky and witnessed this scene with their own eyes. Their faces were somewhat gloomy. "Humph. Qianquan sect is too arrogant." Ji Ku snorted. He had a bad impression of Qianquan sect. Ji Tianqing frowned but didn't say anything. He couldn't care less about such trivial matters. He flew across the square with Ji Ku and landed at the mountain gate halfway up the mountain. The mountain gate, which was 100 meters tall, was majestically carved. The words Qianquan sect were written on it in flamboyant calligraphy. It exuded a grand and majestic aura. There were 36 young disciples in white robes standing guard at the foot of the mountain gate. These disciples were all at LV5 or LV6 of the mystic enlightening realm. They carried swords on their backs and looked arrogant. When Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku walked towards the mountain gate, a young disciple who was about 30 years old extended his hand to stop them. This person was the captain of the guards. He was at LV8 of the mystic enlightening realm. He had a majestic aura and his eyes were sharp. He looked at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku expressionlessly and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. He looked at the scene behind the mountain gate calmly. Ji Ku was displeased with the Qiankuan sect. He said arrogantly, "Go and report to your sect leader that the Tianqian territorial lord has arrived with the demon tribe's princess. Ask him to come and welcome them." The captain of the guards was stunned. He looked at Ji Ku and Ji Tianqing in a daze. After a while, he came back to his senses. He shouted angrily, "Bastards! Who are the two of you? How dare you fool me like this?" The 30 over white-robed guards at the foot of the mountain gate couldn't help but laugh mockingly. "Ha ha ha! What a joke! The Tianqian territorial lord and the demon tribe's princess have arrived. These two are really good at making things up. Hee hee. How dare these two reckless fellows come to our Qiankuan sect to deceive us? They must be tired of living. This man and woman are so young. How dare they fool us and ask to meet our sect leader? Why don't they take a piss and look at themselves in the mirror? Sigh. Our sect has been flourishing in recent years. Many commoners dream of joining our sect. They are willing to take the risk and come up with all sorts of schemes." Chapter 937. Many of the guards roared with laughter as they looked at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku with ridicule and contempt. Ji Ku immediately frowned. Her eyes were filled with anger as she was about to scold the crowd. Ji Tianqing gently waved his hand, indicating that she did not need to say anything. He looked coldly at the captain of the guards. His eyes were sharp as he said in a dignified tone, "Let me give you a piece of advice. Immediately report the news to your sect leader. I will only give you this one chance. Don't make a mistake." With that, he ignored the captain of the guards and turned his back to the mountain gate, waiting silently. The captain of the guards was stunned once again. He furrowed his brows and thought about it with complicated feelings. He instinctively did not believe that Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku were the Tianqian region lord and the demon princess. This was simply too absurd. However, he could see that Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku were extraordinary and unfathomable. They were definitely not ordinary people. Therefore, he was very conflicted and could not make a decision. The 30 over guards once again burst into laughter. They were laughing so hard that they were swaying back and forth. "Ha ha ha. This is too funny. This guy really knows how to act. He actually dares to threaten our captain. He must be tired of living. Is this guy's head stuck in the door? He actually wants to meet our sect leader and still dares to be so arrogant. Senior brothers, don't just stand there. Hurry up and take those two guys down. Give them a good beating and make them scram down the mountain." A few of the guards said as they rushed towards Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku. They revealed mocking sneers and were about to capture them. The captain of the guards hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he did not stop them. He decided to wait and see. He wanted to see Ji Tianqing's strength first before making a decision. In the blink of an eye, 5 white-robed guards surrounded Ji Tianqing. They all used their capturing techniques and reached out to grab Ji Tianqing. Sigh. The king of hell is easy to meet, but the little demons are hard to deal with. Ji Tianqing sighed silently, and his face immediately became cold and solemn. In the next moment, his entire body burst forth with a violent and invisible energy, exploding with a loud bang. Boom! With a muffled explosion, the 5 white-robed guards were shaken by the invisible force and spat out blood. They were sent flying like sandbags and fell to the ground. All 5 of them had suffered internal injuries. After they landed on the ground, their vision turned black and they fainted. Seeing this scene, many of the guards were dumbfounded on the spot. Their faces were filled with horror. That guy didn't even move his hand, and he sent them flying. Oh my God! How is this possible? He actually has such terrifying strength? Who is this guy? After the guard captain came back to his senses, he immediately shouted in shock and anger, "You dare to behave atrociously in our sect? You are too arrogant. We have to capture you, or else we won't be able to answer to the elders of the sect. Go, take them down." After the guard captain gave the order, he pulled out his sword from behind his back and charged towards Ji Tianqing. The 30 or so white-robed guards also drew their swords and surrounded Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke from all directions, joining forces to attack them. They knew that Ji Tianqing was extremely powerful, and they were no match for him. However, since Ji Tianqing dared to hurt someone in front of the sect, as guards, they had to bear the responsibility. They had to capture Ji Tianqing and not bring shame to the Qianquan sect's reputation. This had nothing to do with one's cultivation level. It was about the sect's reputation. Of course, after the guard captain gave the order to capture Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke, he did not forget to send someone to the peak of the mountain to report the news to the deacon and ask for help. The 30 overguards joined forces to display their sword skills. Sword radiance covered the sky as they charged towards Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke. Ji Tianqing casually raised his right hand and waved his sleeves. More than 30 dazzling sword radiance shot out like golden fireworks. Bang, 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 bang. After a series of dull thuds, the golden sword radiance broke through the joint attack of the guards. The 30 overguards were sent flying as they fell to the ground with blood spurting out of their mouths. Thud, thud, thud. The guards fell to the ground in a mess. After they fell to the ground, they could not get up. They clutched their chests and cried out in pain. Ji Tianqing could not be bothered to look at them. He led Ji Ke through the crowd and walked into the sect. His expression was calm as usual as he walked steadily towards the peak of the mountain. At the same time, the commotion at the foot of the mountain had already alerted the patrolling guards and countless Qianquan sect disciples. When Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke were about 100 meters away, two groups of guards rushed towards them. However, these guards were afraid of Ji Tianqing's strength and did not dare to take the initiative to attack. As Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke approached the peak of the mountain, more and more guards and disciples rushed over after hearing the news. There were more than 100 of them. Everyone was vigilant as they followed Ji Tianqing to the top of the mountain with their swords and sabers in their hands. After a while, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke reached the peak of the mountain and arrived at a square. There were more than 10 magnificent palaces on the peak of the mountain. They looked majestic and majestic. Two elders in purple robes rushed to the square with a few deacons in black robes. Their faces were dark. The hundreds of guards and disciples suddenly had a backbone as they bowed to the two elders in purple robes and complained about Ji Tianqing's crimes. "Elder Li, Elder Kai, you're finally here. These two fellows trespassed into our sect's mountain gate and even killed people. They injured more than 30 guards. Elders, that young man in white robes is extremely arrogant. You must punish him harshly to avenge our sect's guards." The two elders came to the square and stopped Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke. The skinny and white-haired elderly looked at Ji Tianqing with a dark expression and shouted, "Bastard! How dare you behave so atrociously in our Qianquan sect? Are you tired of living?" The other tall and burly elder Kai also shouted with a dignified face, "Boy, I don't care who you are. Since you dare to cause trouble in our sect, I will make sure you suffer the consequences today." Although the other deacons in black robes didn't say anything, they were filled with animosity. They quickly spread out and surrounded Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke. Their bodies were filled with powerful energy, ready to launch a thunderous attack at any time. Ji Tianqing glanced at the two purple-robed elders indifferently and said in a cold tone, "I came here to visit the Qianquan sect leader and ask the guards to report the news out of good intentions. However, they dared to spout nonsense and even tried to attack me. I only taught them a lesson and didn't kill them. That's already very merciful of me. I'll repeat myself one last time. I'm Ji Tianqing, the Tianjin region leader. Today, I'm here to visit the Qiankuan sect leader. I have something important to ask him. Go and report to him and ask him to come and see me immediately. Chapter 938. Ji Tianqing's voice was not loud and there was no anger in it. However, his voice was powerful and majestic. It was like a heavy hammer that hit the hearts of the people. The two elders, a few deacons, the guards, and the disciples felt their hearts beat wildly and their faces changed. Tianjin region leader Ji Tianqing. Is he the emperor's son whose name shook the world? He is Ji Tianqing. How is that possible? The legendary Tianjin region lord, Ji Tianqing, is very young, handsome, and in high spirits. This person fits the description. What should we do? The Tianjin region leader has come to our sect. What is he trying to do? The guards and disciples started to discuss among themselves as they looked at Ji Tianqing with complicated expressions. There was some reverence, but also some suspicion and wariness. The faces of the two elders were also very ugly. They looked at each other and secretly exchanged opinions. Then, they made up their minds. Elder Li suppressed the shock and fear in his heart and said to Ji Tianqing sternly, "Young Master Ji, although you are the emperor's son and the Tianjin region leader, you have a noble status. However, this is not Zhong province or your Tianjin region. This is Yong'an region. Our Qiankuan sect is the most powerful sect in Yong'an region. We are not a small sect that anyone can bully. Young Master Ji has come to visit our sect leader. However, you are not sincere at all. Instead, you are so arrogant and you even injured our guards. This is an insult to our sect. Young Master Ji, would you be polite to someone who has insulted you? Do you think our sect leader would still want to see you after you have insulted our sect?" Elder Li's words were spoken in a rhythmic manner. His voice was full of emotion and was very imposing. Elder Kai and the deacons immediately nodded in agreement. That's right. What Elder Li said is absolutely right. Our Qiankuan sect is not to be bullied by anyone. We have our dignity and pride. So what if he is the emperor's son? Could it be that the crown prince can do whatever he wants and be arrogant and despotic? Hearing the crowd's words, Ji Ku was so angry that her face turned pale. She gritted her teeth and cursed, "These despicable bastards are so hypocritical and disgusting." It was clearly them who were arrogant, domineering, and overbearing, but they actually pushed the blame onto us. How despicable. Ji Tianqing did not get angry. He looked coldly at Elder Li and asked in a dignified tone, "So, you are asking me to leave?" Elder Li grinned and sneered arrogantly, It's good that you understand. Young Master Ji, I advise you to withdraw from here so as to avoid damaging our relationship. If things really get out of hand, our sect will definitely report this matter to the imperial court and ask His Majesty to make a decision. At that time, young Master Ji should think of a way to explain things to the emperor. Moreover, you are a famous emperor's son. If the people of the world know that you use your status to do whatever you want and bully your own sect. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly. His tone grew colder as he asked, "Are you threatening me?" Elder Li's lips curled into a cold smile. He looked at Ji Tianqing mockingly and did not answer. Ji Tianqing asked again, "Let me ask you one last question. What did you say just now? Was it your idea or your sect leaders? Is there a difference?" Elder Li raised his eyebrows and asked in an arrogant tone, "Don't tell me you think that just because of your status and reputation, the sect leader will let bygones be bygones and allow you to do whatever you want, and even receive you warmly?" Elder Kai, the deacons, disciples, and guards immediately burst out laughing at such a merciless sarcastic remark. Ji Ku was so angry that she gritted her teeth and her eyes were burning with anger. Anyone who dared to bully Ji Tianqing would be her greatest enemy. She glared at Elderly coldly and shouted angrily, "A mere Qianquan sect dares to be so arrogant. What an eye-opener. And you old bastard, you look so smug and arrogant. You're really disgusting." Elderly's expression immediately changed, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Who the hell are you, you lowly servant girl? How dare you insult me? Do you think that just because you are Ji Tianqing's servant, you can insult others? You!" Ji Ku was suddenly enraged, her entire body surging with anger and majestic true qi. Before she could fly into a rage, Ji Tianqing, who was beside her, brazenly attacked. Swoosh! In a flash, he turned into a golden shadow and appeared in front of Elderly. He raised his hand and slapped Elderly. Everyone's vision blurred. They couldn't see Ji Tianqing's movement clearly. They didn't even know what had happened. With a "pa" sound, Elderly flew out diagonally. He rolled and fell 10 meters away. With a "putong" sound, he smashed onto the ground. Half of his face was swollen like a pig's head. A few white teeth fell out of his mouth and blood bubbled out. Seeing this, everyone was stunned. They widened their eyes and stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. The square was dead silent. Elderly sat on the ground in fear. He covered his swollen face with both hands and stared at Ji Tianqing. You bastard, how dare you attack me?" Other than fear, his heart was filled with humiliation and anger. His entire body was shaking. Ji Tianqing actually sent him flying with a single slap in front of all the elders, deacons, and disciples. This was definitely an unforgettable humiliation in his life. Unparalleled anger and humiliation filled him with murderous intent. His eyes became dark red and bloodshot. He couldn't wait to kill Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and said in a cold tone, "How dare you insult the princess of the demon imperial court? You deserve to die. You should feel lucky that Prince Kunwu is not here. Otherwise, your head would have fallen to the ground." How could Elderly, who was extremely angry, listen to these words? He jumped up from the ground and let out an angry roar. He pounced on Ji Tianqing crazily. "Everyone, go and take him down." Ji Tianqing frowned and shouted in a low voice, "You're courting death." As he spoke, he lifted his right leg and viciously kicked Elderly in the chest. Bang! Crack! With a muffled sound accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, Elderly was sent flying again. He was kicked 100 feet away and smashed heavily on the ground. His chest caved in deeply and became a mess of flesh and blood. His white bones were exposed. More than 10 of his sternum were broken. Due to his serious injuries, he blacked out on the spot and fainted. Elder Kai and a few deacons, as well as many guards and disciples, were about to attack Ji Tianqing. Seeing this, everyone was so frightened that their faces turned pale. They all stopped charging and froze on the spot. Ji Tianqing's cold gaze swept across the crowd. He brought Ji Ku to the main hall of the Heaven and Earth sect. Chapter 939. Ji Tianqing was exuding a domineering aura and killing intent. He led Ji Ku into the main hall of the Qianquan sect and no one dared to stop him. Elder Kai and the deacons were glaring at him with hatred. They followed him into the main hall but no one dared to attack him. However, there were a few quick-witted disciples who hurriedly left the square to report the news to the other elders. After a while, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku walked through the square and arrived at the entrance of the Qianquan Palace. The Qianquan Palace was the main hall of the Qianquan sect. It was the place where the sect leader and the elders discussed matters. When Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku arrived at the entrance of the main hall, there were 9 elders in purple robes and 30 deacons in black robes. Among the elders and deacons, there were 2 elders who were at ethereal cultivation while the rest were at origin core cultivation. "How dare you kill in our Qianquan sect? You are dead meat. Ji Tianqing. You are too arrogant. Stop him. No matter what, we have to protect the dignity of our sect. Our sect leader is in seclusion. Everyone, stop him. We cannot let him escape. It doesn't matter if he is the Tianjin region leader. We have the support of the heavenly concubine and the emperor. Let's report this to the imperial court and let the emperor punish him. The elders shouted and jumped out to surround Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku. Of the two elders in the lead, one was a white-haired old man, the other was a burly middle-aged man like an iron tower. The two of them were the grand elder and second elder of the Qiankuan sect. They were at Sky Origin Stage 3 and 2 respectively. The two of them stood at the entrance of the main hall and stared at Ji Tianqing coldly. They shouted, Ji Tianqing. You asked for it. Don't blame me for being merciless. You've humiliated our sect like this. Our sect is irreconcilable with you. We will not let this go. As they spoke, the two of them took the initiative to attack. They attacked Ji Tianqing from the left and right. The other 7 elders also launched their attacks one after another, besieging Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku. Suddenly, a dazzling true origin light shone in front of the main hall. A violent shockwave exploded. Ji Ku had long been filled with anger. She was about to strike back and ruthlessly teach these elders who couldn't distinguish right from wrong. However, Ji Tianqing was faster than her. He waved his hands and golden sword rays filled the sky. Swoosh! 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 Hundreds of golden sword lights erupted with unstoppable and violent power, instantly exploding in all directions. At this moment, a dazzling 9-leaf golden lotus emerged from the golden sword radiance. It looked dazzling and mystical. Bam! 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 A series of explosions Ji Tian main hall. The 9 elders were sent flying. They spat out mouthfuls of blood as they landed 100 feet away. Each of them suffered at least 3 slashes. There were 3 huge wounds on their bodies. Dark red blood gushed out and splattered on the ground. Their purple robes were drenched in blood. Their clothes were tattered as they lay on the ground in a wretched state. They kept twitching and screaming, unable to get to their feet for the time being. The black-robed elders who were closer to them suffered as well. They were sent flying by the dark golden sword rays. Their bodies were covered in blood as they screamed in agony. In just a blink of an eye, the main hall's entrance was empty. With Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku as the center, nobody dared to come within 100 feet of them. Ji Tianmain had severely injured 9 elders with a single move. Among them were 2 Tianyuan realm experts. This scene instantly stunned everyone present. Everyone's eyes widened, revealing an incomparably horrified expression. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was the incarnation of the devil in their eyes. He was invincible. A moment later, everyone came back to their senses and immediately exploded. They all let out screams of fear and despair and fled in all directions in panic. Ah! Murder! Help! Ji Tianqing is on a killing spree. Quick! Get the sect leader out of there. We're done for. The 9 elders have all been severely injured. Ji Tianqing is going to wash our sect with blood. There were more than 100 people in front of the main hall. However, all of them ran away in just a blink of an eye. The remaining 9 elders and a dozen elders were severely injured. They lay on the ground covered in blood. There was no way they could escape. Ji Tianqing did not want to waste any time. He grabbed a black-robed elder and shouted, "Where's your sect leader cultivating in seclusion? Bring me to him." The black-robed elder was scared out of his wits. When Ji Tianqing grabbed him, his face turned pale. He was sweating profusely as he trembled. I know. I'll bring you to him. Please. Don't kill me. Sect leader. Sect leader is at the back. In the secret chamber of the Qian Tian Palace. Ji Tianqing grabbed the black-robed elder and walked towards the Qian Tian Palace. At this moment, in the sky above the Palace of Cosmos, a streak of colorful light flew past, and an extremely anxious and worried roar burst out. Stop! In the next moment, a middle-aged man in a long golden robe, with a burly figure and a dignified appearance, descended from the sky and landed in front of the main hall. The man in the golden robe was the sect leader of the Qian Tian Palace, Kong Tianqin. Previously, he had been cultivating in seclusion in the secret chamber of the Qian Tian Palace. Just now, one of the elders knocked on his door and woke him up. The elder then reported the situation to him. When he heard that Ji Tianqing had come to the Qian Tian Palace and had a conflict with the elders, he rushed over. However, when he landed in front of the door of the main hall and saw the situation clearly, he realized that he was too late. The ground in front of the main hall was filled with cracks and gullies. Many elders and deacons were lying on the ground with blood all over their bodies. They were groaning and screaming in pain. Seeing this scene, Kong Tianqin was both furious and shocked. Her face was extremely ugly. Ji Tianqing threw away the deacon in his hand and looked at Kong Tianqin coldly. He asked in a deep voice, "You are the Qiankuan sect leader?" Kong Tianqin looked at him as well. When he saw who he was, his eyes widened. He looked as if he was facing a great enemy. "You are Ji Tianqing, the territory leader of the Tianqin territory?" Ji Tianqing nodded and his lips curled into a cold smile. He said mockingly, "Sect leader Kong, your Qiankuan sect has been arrogant recently." Kong Tianqin's expression changed, and she asked in a low voice, "Young Master Ji, why do you say that? Our Qian Tian Palace leader is just a small name in the Yong'an territory. How could we be worthy of your attention? Moreover, our Qian Tian Palace leader has never offended you before. Why are you?" Ji Tianqing laughed coldly. He. Sect leader Kong, you don't have to be so humble. What you just said is completely different from what the elders, deacons, and disciples of your Qian Tian Palace leader have said. Qian Tian Palace leader is now the most powerful sect in the Yong'an territory. Their first disciple, Ansuan, is now a heavenly lady. Chapter 940. Upon hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Kong Tianqin's expression changed. The Qiankuan sect had been living in seclusion for a long time. Most of them were ignorant of the situation in Zhong Plains. In the entire Qiankuan sect, he was the only one who knew the situation in Zhong Plains. Of course, he knew that no matter how powerful the Qiankuan sect was, they had no right to look down on the emperor's son. Especially when the emperor's son was the #1 prodigy of the human race, the territory lord who was personally selected by the emperor himself. Kong Tianqin lowered his head and bowed to Ji Tianqing. He put on a fearful expression and quickly explained, "Why do you say that, young Master Ji? Our disciple, Ansuan, has indeed become a heavenly lady. However, we would never dare to be arrogant and disrespect the territory lord because of this." Ji Tianqing looked at him with a cold smile. He did not want to waste his breath on him. Many elders and deacons crawled up from the ground, covered in blood, and surrounded Ji Tianqing and Kong Tianqin in the middle. Initially, when they saw Kong Tianqin's arrival, they thought that they would finally be able to vent their frustrations. However, they did not expect Kong Tianqin to not only not be angry, but he also did not dare to do anything to Ji Tianqing. Instead, he acted submissively. All the elders and deacons felt humiliated and angry. They did not understand what was going on. The Grand Elder, who was the leader of the elders, shouted angrily, "Sect leader! Ji Tianqing is the one who bullied us. He thinks that he is the territory lord of Tianqin and does not respect our Qiankuan sect. Not only did he barge into our sect, injuring more than 30 guards, but he also injured elderly and knocked him unconscious. We tried to stop him, but he attacked us without saying a word and injured all of us. Sect leader, you must not be fooled by him and you must not yield to him. The other elders also chimed in, accusing Ji Tianqing of his crimes with righteous indignation. Sect leader, Ji Tianqing has gone too far. Qianquan's sect will not allow him to humiliate us. Otherwise, we will lose face. Sect leader, Ji Tianqing is so arrogant and despotic. Are we going to swallow this humiliation? You should report this matter to the heavenly concubine now. The heavenly concubine will definitely seek justice for our sect. Yes. The Son of Heaven and His Majesty the Emperor will definitely not allow Ji Tianqing to bully our sect like this. Sect leader, if you don't bring Ji Tianqing to justice today, how can our Qianquan sect establish itself in Yong'an region in the future? Wouldn't he be ridiculed by the world? When Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku heard the elders' cries of pain, they looked on with disdain and disdain. Kong Tianqing, on the other hand, was so angry that he was trembling. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his eyes were filled with ferocity. He glared at the few elders and growled with a voice that sounded like muffled thunder, "Shut up. A bunch of bastards. You've committed such a grave mistake, yet you still dare to distort right and wrong." All the elders and deacons were stunned. Their eyes widened in disbelief as they stared at Kong Tianqing. They thought that they had heard wrongly. They could not believe what they had just heard. When the Grand Elder regained his senses, he said in a low voice, "Sect leader. How could you be so foolish? We, Qianquan sect, have our pride and dignity." Before he could finish, Kong Tianqing waved his hand and interrupted him, "Grand Elder, shut up." The Grand Elder's body froze. He glared at Ji Tianqing and gritted his teeth. However, there was nothing he could do. The rest of the elders and deacons were also glaring at Ji Tianqing. They were so angry that they could only suppress their anger. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Both sides could erupt into an even deeper feud at any time. At such a critical juncture, if Qianquan sect did not handle this matter well, they would be severely injured or even destroyed. Kong Tianqing lived up to his name as the sect leader. He was extremely intelligent and shrewd. He took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. With a calm expression, he looked at Ji Tianqing and said respectfully, "Young Master Ji, our disciples have indeed offended you in this matter. I, Kong, would like to apologize to you on behalf of my disciples. However, we have no intention of offending you. There must be some misunderstanding. Please go to the guest hall and rest for a while." This Kong Tianqing is able to endure what others cannot. He is very far-sighted and knows the big picture. He is indeed someone. Ji Tianqing thought to himself. However, he did not show it on his face and nodded. After that, Kong Tianqing sent 2 guards to bring Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku to the guest hall. After the 2 of them left, Kong Tianqing turned to the elders and deacons and said, "All of you, follow me to the secret chamber and explain everything." After that, he led the elders and deacons into the secret chamber on the left side of the meeting hall. The secret chamber was dimly lit and was protected by a powerful formation. There was no need to worry about being eavesdropped on. Kong Tianqing was the first to enter the secret chamber. He sat on a large jade chair and looked at everyone sternly. "What the hell is going on? Tell me everything from the beginning to the end. Not a single word of falsehood." The elders and deacons stood still in the secret chamber. They looked at each other but no one dared to say anything. After all, most of them only rushed to help after hearing the news. They did not know the cause and details of the incident. Just as the Grand Elder was about to speak, Kong Tianqing glared at him and said, "Grand Elder, you better shut up. You were the last to arrive. There is no way you know the cause of the incident." Kong Tianqing's words made the Grand Elder choke on his words. He was so angry that his face turned red. After a while, a deacon in a black robe stepped forward. He was covered in blood and had a bloody nose and a swollen face. He said timidly, "Faction leader, I was guarding the mountain gate today. I was inside the mountain gate when the incident happened. I saw it with my own eyes." "Then you tell me." Kong Tianxin looked at him sternly and said in a deep voice, "If you dare to lie to me, I will chop off your head." The deacon in a black robe was shocked. He quickly nodded and said, "Yes. I will tell you the truth. 15 minutes ago, Ji Tianxing and the young lady arrived at the mountain gate. They were stopped by the leader of the guards. The young lady asked the leader of the guards to inform you that the territory leader and the princess of the demonic tribe had come to visit. They have something to discuss with you." The guards laughed and did not believe what they said. They mocked them and even wanted to capture Ji Tianxing and the young lady. They wanted to give them 50 lashes each and throw them down the mountain. Kong Tianxin frowned when he heard this. He thought to himself, "I knew it." The Grand Elder also realized that something was wrong. However, he did not want to admit defeat. He muttered, "You can't blame the guards. They are just doing their job. They are lowly people and they have never seen Ji Tianxing. How could they believe what they said? If you want to blame someone, you can only blame Ji Tianxing. Since he didn't hand over the invitation and didn't take out the token of a domain lord, who would believe that he's the domain lord?" Kong Tianxin was so angry that he started to laugh. He pointed at the Grand Elder and scolded, "Bastard! Is your brain kicked by a donkey? Ji Tianxing is the territory leader, the #1 genius of the human race. He is the emperor's son of the demonic tribe. Why would he need to show you the token of the territory leader? Who do you think you are? You are just a bunch of guards. To him, you are just ants. Why would he show you the token of the territory leader? Would you show the token to the ants on the ground? Even if he showed you the territory leader's golden seal, would you be able to recognize it? Have you ever seen the territory leader's golden seal? Can you tell if it is real or fake?" The Great Elder was rendered speechless on the spot. His old face flushed red and turned purple. He was so ashamed that he wished he could find a hole in the ground to hide in. The other elders and deacons had the same thought. Chapter 941. The secret room was completely silent. Everyone lowered their heads in shame, feeling very nervous. Kong Tianxin looked at the black deacon and said in a deep voice, "Continue." The deacon in black continued, "After Ji Tianxing and the girl injured the guards of the mountain gate, they rushed through the mountain gate and rushed to the mountain peak. My subordinates, deacons, and guards heard the news and rushed to the scene. However, none of them dared to stop them. After that, Elder Li and Elder Kai arrived and stopped Ji Tianxing. Elder Li argued with Ji Tianxing and humiliated Ji Tianxing. After that, he was severely injured by Ji Tianxing and fainted. Kong Tianxin's frown deepened as he ordered, "Repeat what Elder Li and Ji Tianxing said to me." The deacon did not dare to hide anything. He quickly told Kong Tianxin everything that Elder Li and Ji Tianxing said. Kong Tianxin was so angry that she slammed her palm on the jade chair. "Pine! Bastard! What a bastard! Elder Li is such an idiot. He almost caused our sect to be destroyed. He doesn't even know what the name, Ji Tianxing, means. How dare he put on airs in front of Ji Tianxing? He even insulted him and the girl beside him." Luckily, Elder Li was severely injured by Ji Tianxing and fainted. That allowed Ji Tianxing to vent his anger. "Otherwise, I would have punished him as well." Kong Tianxin exuded a chilling aura, and her anger filled the entire secret chamber. Everyone lowered their heads in fear, and no one dared to even breathe loudly. Although the first elder was not happy about it, he did not dare to say anything. The second elder hesitated for a moment before he said, "Faction leader, don't you think it's disappointing for everyone to hear what you said about Elder Li? So what if Ji Tianxing is the realm lord of Tianjin region and a famous emperor's disciple? Our Qinkuan sect does not have to lower our heads to him. We can report to the heavenly concubine and ask the Son of Heaven to back us up if he dares to run amok in our sect. Besides, the heavenly concubine can also report this to the emperor. The emperor will definitely punish Ji Tianqing. The other elders and deacons nodded in agreement. That's right. Second elder is right. Why should we lower our heads to Ji Tianqing? Humph. Emperor's disciple is nothing. Is he more honorable than the emperor? So what if Ji Tianqing is the #1 genius of the human race? The emperor's disciple can decide his life and death. Kong Tianqing stared coldly at the elders and deacons. Suddenly, she was so angry that she let out a sneer. Ha ha ha. You bunch of frogs at the bottom of a well. Have you been blinded by false reputation? Have you been blinded by lard? The Yong'an region lord is only being polite to us because of the heavenly concubine and the emperor. Do you really think that Ji Tianqing is the same as the Yong'an region lord? You don't even know the situation in Zhong state. You don't even know how high Ji Tianqing's position in the human race is. And Suwen is indeed the heavenly concubine, but you don't even know that the emperor doesn't like her at all. Has the emperor ever come to our sect? Has he ever sent any gifts or letters to our sect? If it weren't for Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao, the heavenly concubine would have been locked up in the cold palace. You wouldn't be able to sit here and act so smug. The elders and deacons were dumbfounded when they heard the shocking news. The second elder's expression changed drastically, and his entire old face turned red. Kong Tianqing grinned and continued, the heavenly concubine is indeed honorable, but even if she saw Ji Tianqing, she has no right to be arrogant. Do you understand? Even the emperor can't punish Ji Tianqing because he and Ji Tianqing are good friends. Friends of equal status. The emperor doesn't even care about Qinkuan sect, but you naively think that the emperor is our son-in-law and will back us up. Not to mention the emperor, even the emperor himself thought highly of Ji Tianqing. He even personally conferred Ji Tianqing the title of Heavenly Stellar Region Lord. No matter what Ji Tianqing did in Zhong state, even if he destroyed the Duanmu family, one of the 3 ancient families, the emperor did not punish him. Even the Duanmu family was destroyed by Ji Tianqing. What is Qinkuan sect to him? What right do you have to be so arrogant in front of him? You attacked Ji Tianqing and he didn't kill you on the spot. That's already very kind of him. Otherwise, do you think you're still alive and complaining to me? Kong Tianqing was agitated. She slammed her palms on the jade chair as she spoke, as if she had expected better from Wuqi. All the elders and deacons were so scared that their faces turned pale. Sweating profusely, they buried their heads in their chests. They did not dare to imagine that Ji Tianqing's status was so high. Ji Tianqing's strength and methods were so powerful that it was terrifying. When they thought about how the Duanmu family was destroyed by Ji Tianqing, they felt a chill run down their spines. They rejoiced in their hearts that they were still alive after provoking Ji Tianqing. Kong Tianqing was so angry that his chest heaved up and down. It took him a long time to calm down. He looked at the crowd sternly and scolded angrily, "You bunch of pig brains. You only know how to be arrogant and think that you're the best in the world. You don't respect anyone. How many times have I told you to restrain yourselves? What happened in the end? Now, you've finally met someone that you can't afford to offend. You were beaten up so badly, and now you have to apologize to him with a smile on your face. It's all because of you. If I didn't arrive in time, you would have created a huge mess for me." All the elders and deacons lowered their heads and clenched their fists. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. Now that things had come to this, they no longer dared to complain. They were all regretting their actions. After a long time, Kong Tianqing suppressed his anger and said in a cold and serious tone, "What's done is done. This is a painful lesson that I hope you will remember. In the future, all of you better restrain yourselves. Don't let this arrogant and despotic atmosphere continue to spread. I will also do my best to rectify this unhealthy trend. If we don't stop this evil trend in time, sooner or later, our faction will be destroyed. All the elders were remorseful. They quickly saluted Kong Tianxin and said, "Yes, sir." When Kong Tianxin saw that everyone had lowered their heads and admitted their mistakes, his anger dissipated. He said in a dignified tone, "Now, all of you follow me to the guest hall. I will bring all of you to see Ji Tianqing. You must show your sincerity and apologize to him in person. I will do my best to deal with this matter properly. Even if I have to sacrifice a lot, I will appease Ji Tianqing's anger. We cannot afford to offend him. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable." Chapter 942. Inside the main hall of Qinkuan sect. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku were sitting on the left side of the main hall. They were resting with their eyes closed. On the table beside the two of them, there was a fragrant spiritual tea and exquisite and delicious pastries. However, he did not eat the pastries or drink the tea. Instead, he looked at them coldly and waited for the results. Not long after, a series of heavy footsteps could be heard coming from the entrance of the hall. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku opened their eyes and looked towards the entrance of the grand hall. They saw Kong Tianxin leading 9 elders and more than 20 deacons into the grand hall with their heads lowered. The elders and deacons looked like frosted eggplants. They did not dare to look at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku's faces. Kong Tianxin stood in front of Ji Tianqing. He held up the teacup with both hands and handed it to Ji Tianqing respectfully. "Young Master Ji, today's matter is indeed a misunderstanding. We can only blame our sect's guards, deacons, and elders for being ignorant frogs at the bottom of a well. They had eyes but failed to see. They did not recognize that you were here in person and offended you. Just now, I have already severely reprimanded them and made them realize their mistakes. I, Kong, represent Qinkuan sect and sincerely apologize to you. I hope that you will not hold a grudge against us and forgive us for offending you." With that said, Kong Tianxin handed the tea to Ji Tianqing with both hands. She lowered her head respectfully, as if she was apologizing for her mistake. Ji Tianqing did not take the tea. He looked at Kong Tianxin expressionlessly and said, "Faction leader Kong, you are a person who knows when to stop. You have a bright future ahead of you. However, this is just your attitude. You are representing all the elders and deacons of Qinkuan sect. They might not be convinced. All the elders of your sect are so arrogant that they can even ask you to leave on your behalf." Kong Tianxin was smart enough to understand what Ji Tianqing was trying to say before he could finish his sentence. Kong Tianxin turned around and looked at the elders and deacons behind him. He shouted, "You bunch of bastards! What are you waiting for? Why aren't you kneeling and admitting your guilt? Kneel down and confess." All the elders and deacons were stunned for a moment. Their faces became very ugly, and their hearts were filled with hesitation. However, Kong Tianxin's face darkened, and a domineering aura burst out from his body as he shouted, "Kneel." All the elders and deacons suddenly trembled, intimidated by his majesty. They all knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Ji Tianqing, begging for forgiveness. "We were blind and offended young Master Ji. Please forgive us, young Master Ji. We failed to recognize a prodigy and offended young Master Ji. We hereby kowtow and apologize to young Master Ji. We hope that young Master Ji will forgive us. We are bastards. We are frogs in a well. We shouldn't have offended young Master Ji. Please forgive us." 9 elders and over 20 deacons knelt on the ground, kowtowing in fear and trepidation while begging for forgiveness. The hall was instantly filled with clamor. A group of people covered in blood, with bruises all over their faces, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing was a comical sight. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing reached out and took a sip of the spirit tea that Kong Tianxin was holding. All right, let them all leave. I have something important to tell you. Hearing this, Kong Tianxin let out a sigh of relief. He quickly bowed and said, "Thank you for your magnanimity, young Master Ji. I can't thank you enough." After that, he waved his hand at the elders and deacons, indicating that they should leave. As if they had been pardoned, they quickly stood up and left the hall. After a while, only Ji Tianxing, Ji Ku, and Kong Tianxin were left in the hall. At this time, Kong Tianxin asked tentatively, "Young Master Ji, how may I help you?" Ji Tianxing didn't beat around the bush and said directly, "Sect Master Kong, what I want to tell you is related to the Shenhui sect. More than 100 years ago, the Green Mountain sect raised a flood dragon and had the heavenly prayer mirror. As a result, they were attacked by the Green Mountain sect and the other three major forces. The Shenhui sect was besieged by the four major forces. After a fierce battle, the heavenly prayer mirror was detonated. The five major sects were severely damaged, and their strength was greatly damaged. The flood dragon was taken away by Elder Ji of the Shenhui sect, but the dragon crystal was taken away by another group of experts. After many investigations, I finally found out that the dragon crystal is in the hands of the Heaven and Earth sect." At this point, Ji Tianxing looked at Kong Tianxin with a deep and sharp gaze. He didn't say anything else. In fact, he only guessed that the dragon crystal was in the hands of the Heaven and Earth sect. He didn't have any clues or evidence. He said this on purpose to test Kong Tianxin. Kong Tianxin was taken aback. His expression changed slightly, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. "This." He frowned. After a moment of hesitation, he asked cautiously, "Young Master Ji, did you come to the Heaven and Earth sect for that dragon crystal?" Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianxing was secretly pleased. "Humph, it seems that I guessed right. The dragon crystal is in the hands of the Heaven and Earth sect." Kong Tianxin heard that I had investigated it thoroughly. Seeing my confident tone, he didn't dare to hide the truth. His expression didn't change. He nodded calmly and said, "That's right. I came for the dragon crystal." Kong Tianxin furrowed his brows, showing a hesitant expression. "Young Master Ji, to tell you the truth, the dragon crystal did fall into the hands of our sect after a few rounds. However, the last sect master of our sect was a grandmaster in crafting magic tools. He used the dragon crystal as the core to craft a top-notch magic tool of the heavenly origin state." Ji Tianxing also furrowed his brows. "Is the dragon crystal in good condition? It hasn't been melted down, right?" Kong Tianxin shook his head. "No. But the dragon crystal is the core of the magic tool." Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "As long as the dragon crystal is in good condition, it's fine. Go and get the magic tool." Kong Tianxin put on a troubled expression. "Young Master Ji, that magic tool is the Ice Dragon Compass. It is very important to our sect. It is used to gather spiritual veins. If we lose this magic tool or the dragon crystal, our spiritual veins will be affected." Ji Tianxing didn't waste any more time. He took out two magic tools from his infinite space ring and slammed them on the table. "I only want the dragon crystal. I'll give you these two magic tools as compensation. Is that enough?" The two magic tools he took out were a top-notch heavenly origin sword and a heavenly gold compass. He had more than 100 magic tools in his infinite space ring. These were all low-grade items that he had no use for. However, to the Heaven and Earth sect, a magic tool was a priceless treasure. It was extremely rare. Kong Tianxin was stunned on the spot. Her eyes were fixed on the two instruments and her heart was filled with shock. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.